right, there we go. Hi. We're no longer muted.
Hello.
Weird session.
Welcome to the Dungeons and Dragons stream. I would say the Elysia campaign, but we're having a slight change of plans here. A couple of the players, Eric can't make it tonight, and Nerdy is going to be a bit late. He's got some stuff going on. So we're going to change things up a little bit because for us Americans, it's a holiday weekend. We had our 4th of July. For those of you that don't know what that is, which...
Independence Day, but not the movie with Will Smith.
Yes, not the movie with Will Smith. We basically celebrate us kicking Britain's ass in the Revolutionary War with fireworks and just American things like burgers and beer and being shirtless.
Should I share a fun 4th of July story with this stream?
Yeah, go ahead. This is a chill stream right now. Yeah. We got jazz music playing.
That's why we got, dark coffee or spilled dark coffee from Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney Trials and Tribulations. The 3rd game in the trilogy.
So, little history on your boy here. I've partied a little bit in college. I've shotgunned a beer once or twice in my life. Yesterday, I went to shotgun a beer. It was the first drink of the night. I figured start off strong, right? I cut the hole in the bottom. I got the beer ready, and I go to pop the tab, and the tab broke off when my lips were touching the can. So it created a vacuum, and it pulled my lips into the can and just cut the shit out of them.
Oh!
So I'm sitting there walking around the start of this 4th of July party with like a wad of towels in my mouth.
Oh!
Hey guys.
That sucks.
Nice.
I laugh about it already, but everything
that's
drink
a good
is
story.
very spicy.
That is
yes. So, because it's going to be a slightly different session tonight, we're not going to be playing the normal campaign, so there's going to be no more furthering of the party story. You'll have to wait for that till next week, so if that turns you off and you leave, please don't. Please stay. Please don't leave me. I have
a fun time here.
separation anxiety. But yeah, so we're going to be tier ranking the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition adventures, specifically the one that this specific group has played. So before we started streaming, we've played a handful of these adventures. We've been playing since October of 2019. So we've got almost 2 years under our belt. We've played 5 or 6 of the adventures.
I just want to throw out there too, I think there's you could count on one hand how many weeks we've skipped in that entire time frame. It's been every Monday consistently. I don't think we've skipped more than 5.
And honestly, we have played during like when all the COVID stuff was going on, or the Backstreet Boys World Tour.
The good old Backstreet Boys reunion tour.
If you watch Game Grumps, you'll
that's what
know
they
my
call
reference.
It. Aaron Hansen still calls it that even on the Shuffle Master channel.
Even though that's not a problem anymore. Anyways, we actually played more during the pandemic, so I think there were a couple weeks we played 2 or 3 times in 1 week just because we're like, no one else is doing anything, let's do it. So we're going to be going through all of the published 5e adventures, discussing the ones that we know, not really discussing the ones we don't know as well, simply because I don't want to make any rash judgments. And we'll just be sharing our thoughts, my thoughts being the Dungeon Master, for most of them except for Lost Minds of Phandelver, which Matt here,
That's me.
he is the one who ran that as the DM, so he'll get to discuss the DM end of that, and then everyone else can discuss how they felt as the player, what we liked, what we didn't like.
I know a little bit about the Strahd on the DM side. I've run Strahd briefly.
Brennan has run Strahd briefly.
Did not go far. I wouldn't mind running it again, though. It'd be fun.
I'd play Strahd again. Strahd's phenomenal, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yes.
So it's just gonna be a chill, jazz-filled night. So put your bathrobe on, cuddle up
coffee.
with your lover, get your coffee or your wine or your scotch, and just chill out to some Dungeons and Dragons in my beautiful fucking voice.
Yeah. Also, we got a new emote for the follower emote section. I spent literally 5 minutes, not even joking, really 5 minutes in Photoshop to make Sentinel Fried Chicken Bucket. So now we have a new emote, Renaki 1 SFC, the Fried Chicken Bucket of Sentinel.
Yep, so
that's it, that's the emote.
Yep, what I was just about to say is, if you love what we do,
subscribe.
You'll get notification, or not follow. I always do this every session. Follow us if you like what we do. You'll get pings every time we play D&D or do a fun little session like this. You also get notifications when Brennan's doing something else. Right now, he's finishing up the original Ace Attorney. He'd be moving on to probably Ace Attorney 2 at some point this week.
Technically, what I'm doing isn't original Ace Attorney, but it also is because it's the first game. But it was added after in the Wii shop, strangely enough, as like an expansion to it, as an extra case. But it's very weird and very interesting, and I like it.
That's what he's
doing
right now.
My first time going through it, so it's
Check
fun
him out.
with that one.
It's fun. And if you really love what we do, subscribe. All the money go towards the channel, make it better, make our lives better. If you hate what we do, subscribe, because if we make enough money, we'll stop what we're doing and go live on a yacht. That's my plan.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Yacht life. Yacht rock. So the only other thing I am going to mention here, because Matt asked me to mention this, so it comes to our attention that there was a lot of concern last week about Darian Kipps being very upset about some of the things that were going on in last week's session, and whether or not the player was upset with those things. And we want to assure you that in a role-playing game, there's this little thing that we do that's called role-playing. And it's where we take out the emotions and opinions of another character while we play the game. And that was what was going on there. So no need to worry. We're all good. He's not going to quit the stream, and there's no butthurt or anything.
Yeah, we're all buddies here.
There's no table flipping going on here.
He did a very good job. Yeah. Trust me, I messaged him in session. I was like, dude, are you okay? Like, are you pissed right now? And he's like, nah, dude, I'm fine.
I watched the VOD afterward, and I was like, oh my god, I really sold that. I'm thinking about signing up for doing like some. If there's
the Dungeons and Dragons Oscars, I'd like to nominate him for best role player of the year for that one.
Imagine if I could do like accents or voices. That'd be the next level. I gotta work on it. I'll work on it.
You work on that.
And I'm sure it's probably not a bad idea to reiterate this again next week, just because that's an actual session. But
yes, we will be continuing to picking up the game next week. So it'll go back to
hopefully.
Darian,
more than likely.
Sentinel, Darby, Arthur, and Prince of Farin back to their normal adventures. Yeah. Find out what happens after they defeated Balik and burned the Goethis tree. But with that, unless anyone else has any announcements, why don't we go ahead and start our classy tier ranking night?
All I gotta say is I was going to jokingly make the we are playing characters thing an ad from our wonderful sponsor of acting, but that works too.
Matt's not here to do our sponsorships. We are sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, Audible,
acting. We're sponsored by acting, a thing that we do every day when we're here.
George Foreman, that's our newest sponsor. George Foreman Grills. Buy a George Foreman grill. Sponsor me, George Foreman. No one else does. We're also sponsored by Sears, because they'll take anyone to talk about them right now.
We really are we're taking the Markiplier approach to this. We're just calling a brand out and telling them to sponsor us.
Which, speaking of which, I found out that Sears the last Sears went out of business in Michigan, so there are no Sears in Michigan anymore.
Oh, dang.
Really?
Aww.
Yeah.
I would say it's too bad.
End of an era.
They don't really do anything important.
End of an era.
End of an era. There's a giant like Sears like warehouse or something. My buddy lives in the Livonia area.
Yeah.
There's this huge. It's like a compound. It's like the size of like a mall, and it just says Sears on it, and the parking lot's all overgrown. The windows are busted out. I'm like, geez, that's real sketchy looking.
That's Sears right now, unfortunately. The one that was by us went out of business a couple years ago, and it was really creepy because it was in a mall, and for the longest time they just had the gates down, and it was just an empty, mega like hub store in this mall. And I was like, that has got to be like the scariest thing to be in the middle of the night.
Could you imagine?
And I would love to go and check that out.
Like, could you imagine if they ran like hide and seek or laser tag in that? Oh
my gosh,
it'd be so fun.
Mall laser tag would be cool, or like those zombie survival things they do like in Europe. They like have the warehouse.
Yeah.
Do that in like an abandoned mall or in an abandoned. There you go, Sears. Relicense the spot. Put a zombie apocalypse thing in your old dilapidated building, and you'll make millions. I'd do it.
Perfect.
Anyways, D&D books though. Yeah, D&D books though. D&D books.
Yeah, this isn't us talking. This isn't this talking about Sears podcast. Which I bet if you went online, you would find a "Let's Talk About Sears" podcast.
There probably is
podcasts for everything.
Also just for the fun of it, while we're.
I mean, it's not a bad idea to talk about the bygone era.
Yeah, I mean they were like
Kmart and
all those companies are massive.
What was the company that GameStop bought out? EB Games. There's another one, Funkoland or something.
Yeah.
Talk about those old stores. I was thinking, we watched Fear Street 1994. It's a new horror movie that got added to Netflix. I'm totally off tangent here. And they had all this 90s stuff in there, and they were running through a mall at the beginning of the movie, and there's all these stores. And I'm like, Holy shit, I remember that when I was like 8. I remember that when I was like 7. Like, I was thinking like Sunco Video. Does anyone remember Sunco Video that was in the malls? It was just all these VHSs, and
Jesus,
you could buy like
Fox.
the individual like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon VHSs in there that had like 4 episodes on them at the time. Just like a weird fucking, I don't know. I was just like, I'm almost 30. I'm turning 30 this year, and I was like, I don't feel that old, but I'm gonna turn 30 and just die. So you guys got until September and then the stream ends because I'm just gonna kick the bucket.
Oh God.
But with that lovely little thought, why don't we go ahead and start ranking these events?
We're gonna have to
Get a new bucket of Sentinel KFC.
Yeah. You saw a new
Brandon's gonna have
bucket.
to put like timestamps on the VOD when he uploads it. He's like, yeah, you guys can skip the first 20 minutes because we're just talking about steers.
I'm not gonna lie, I've considered timestamping the actual sessions, but I don't even know how to do it, so I have not done that.
That's okay. Maybe some people are interested in our opinions on the sad, dilapidated fate of Sears.
Right. Now that I'm done putting funny ha-has on the screen with the full art of the Sentinel fight
Next ranking list.
Alright.
We're gonna rank all our favorite stores, mall stores.
All of our favorite out-of-business mall stores.
F tier.
No, FYE is bottom tier. I hated it.
FYE is like a D or C tier. They're overpriced, and I remember. Okay, I'm sorry. We're continuing this great.
As a former employee, FYE is terrible. Don't go there.
When FYE was like, at least in the mall that's by us, FYE was this mega store. You had 2 entrances. They sold everything in their computers.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
Office equipment, everything. And now it's like this tiny little bitch of a store that you have to like flip through the things to find what movie you want. It's like $40 because they charge actual MSRP for Blu-rays. Who charges $30 for a Blu-ray disc anymore? It's crazy. I bet Brendan gets a strongly worded email from FYE after this, like, hey, you can't be saying this.
You know, now that I think about it, saying I'm a former employee might also not be allowed. But it wasn't FYE. It was BYE. It's a completely different company. It's by your entertainment instead of for your entertainment.
I would say if you were a non-disclosure, who cares?
No, there's no.
Worked for them for like 6 months.
I did.
All right, let's do this. Unless we want to keep talking about stores for this entire session.
Our D&D stream about all of the old mall stores that are going
all mall stores that
out
don't
of business
anymore. Brookstone was another one. Well, Brendan pulls this up. Brookstone's another one that's like gone from all the malls.
Oh, it's all up. We're good. Like we can just go.
I was getting dinner with a buddy, and he's like, "My mall doesn't have a Brookstone anymore." And I looked it up, and there's like 1 Brookstone in the Michigan, and I'm like, "All the Brookstones are gone. Well, I can't sit in the massage chairs and look at the useless shit no one wants to buy and just looks at when they go in there."
While we're on it, Circuit City. Come on. I'm just gonna
Circuit City. That's another one.
Rest in peace, Circuit City.
I know. There's so many stores when you think about it.
Also, like Magic Fry, not a store, but a food place.
Yeah, Magic Fry.
Great place. They were so good. Got it one
time. Does anyone remember
and then I never saw them
Play?
again.
Yeah.
Media Play was like another, like almost like an FYE kind of store, kind of overpriced, but they had literally everything. It'd be like, I feel like watching a 1960s science fiction movie about a giant slug, and they'd have like all 50 of them that were released. And they'd be like $80, but you could find them if you really wanted to.
Impressive.
Yeah.
Wow.
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster. There we go.
Another one.
Family Video.
The Family Video's all announced. They're going out of business too.
There's still a Family Video in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, and every time I drive by it, their sign just talks about how much CBD oil they sell there. I don't think they sell any movies.
Every single one of them just ended up becoming CBD dealerships.
Come and get your weed, rent a movie while you're here. Get high and watch a movie.
Okay, there was one that was just great. Great partnership is they were connected. It was a pizza place, a local pizza place, and a Family Video, and they had deals for each other. So like, if you bought a pizza, you got a free rental. If you rented so many movies, you got a free pizza.
That's
and then also on their big sign, CBD oil. So it's just, you got a whole night, planned for you.
I mean, literally
right there.
That is
one-stop shop.
Smoke it, eat it, watch it, all well baked. That is the trifecta of the perfect business model.
There you go.
Someone there has got brains.
Someone was thinking, yep.
All right, so with family videos that sell CBD oil, let's begin this Dungeons and Dragons podcast before I think of another store that I want to talk about.
We're gaining so many sponsors.
I know.
Man, sponsored by all these out of business companies. Let's go.
Well, so this was a little more on brand, but TSR. So TSR, for those that don't know, was the original publishers of Dungeons and Dragons before Wizards bought it for at the 3rd edition or whatever. They're releasing some space role-playing game, and they're getting beat up by copyright stuff right now, which is kind of.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they came back I don't know the whole story. I'm sure someone in the comments on YouTube or this thing tell me how wrong I am, because I haven't read that much on it. But it's Gary Gygax's son or grandson or something is reviving TSR, and he's coming out with a space RPG, and everyone's there's some copyright stuff related to the name of TSR and stuff that they've gotten in trouble with. So. Well,
I think they got in trouble with some other stuff as well recently, and a company with the same name, they ended up changing their name because they didn't want to be associated with them anymore.
Yeah.
And I guess it was some racist comments and all sorts of stuff. They're getting in some deep stuff.
Always a good time.
Always a good time. That's like Beaner's Coffee changing to Big B Coffee because, well. For those of you that don't know this, in Michigan, I don't know if this chain is anywhere else, there's a chain of coffee places called Big B Coffee. They were originally called Beaner's Coffee, and, well, if you don't know what that means, Google it, because I'm not going to talk about it.
Don't Google it.
What'd you say?
I don't know if you can get on trouble on Twitch for saying. I imagine it's probably. Okay.
I'm talking about an old business.
Yeah,
if they want to yell at Brendan, tell them the story. It's. I'm not using it in the derogatory sense. I'm using it in the former name of a coffee shop that changed their name because it's a derogatory word. All right, and with that,
let's give all the work to Brendan.
Racist coffee shops. Now we're going to go to Dungeons and Dragons.
Speaking of racist food, Papa John. No. It is, but let's not open up that can of worms.
All I know is Pizza Hut took over the sponsorship as the NFL, and I love football. And I'm glad about that because Papa John's sucks. I don't want a Papa John's sponsorship on this channel. Papa John's is ass, and Pizza Hut is S-tier pizza. So, sponsor me, Pizza Hut. Fuck you, Papa John's.
Yeah, they really are taking the Markiplier route right now. Calling out companies saying, I don't want your sponsorship anymore. You had your opportunity.
You get your You get your Little Caesars tasted bullshit out of your Papa John's. I'll pay $5 for a Little Caesars, not $20 for Papa John's pizza.
We loosened the reins on the stream just a little bit, and
it just derails so fast.
It's all chaos. Everything's
all I know is one time I'm hanging out with Brendan and my wife, because Brendan's my brother-in-law, and we decided to get pizza from Papa John's, and we ate it, and we were like, this might be the worst pizza we've ever had in our life.
In the sketchiest location, it was right next to a
sex store or something.
No, it was I wish it was. Loan Sharks. It was a loan shark, right next to it.
It was a loan. Yep.
And it was.
So you can take out a loan and invest in Papa John's pizza and lose all your money.
There you go.
Ass.
It was terrible. It was the worst.
Next time we don't play Dungeons and Dragons, official pizza tier ranking list by the stream.
I am down for that.
There we go.
I would do that. Yeah. That would be fun.
Not gonna lie. That's up there with Sajam ranking every kind of sandwich.
I will say if we get done with this quickly and don't want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, I'll be game pull up a pizza tier list. Let's rank the pizza franchises.
Honestly, I'm down.
Brendan, pull up that list. Any more off track here?
Okay. I'll go find one when the time comes.
We do have the tier. Oh, you gotta share your screen so we can see it there, Brendan.
If I do that, it'll show up on the
Ethan,
cameras.
you might just have to look at Brendan's stream.
Yeah.
Okay, I can actually do that.
It is also posted in the Discord, so you can just pull it up if you really want.
I did have it up, but I want to see what we're moving and stuff, so I don't have to have all my DM stuff up because I don't normally watch the streams because I have my monitors are full of DMing fun.
I usually have it up in some capacity.
You're not padding our view count? That's rude.
How dare you? Every stream should have at least 6 viewers.
We have 3 right now.
I know.
Look at us go.
I'm pretty sure it's me, Nick,
I'm in it, and I count.
I don't know if Brendan counts.
No, I
as
count,
long
I
as he's the
count.
actual streamer.
Yeah.
Who's Vatican City Magoo?
I don't know, but that's the thing is there's like some things on Twitch that are basically bots that go around and stuff.
It's pictures.
Watch.
It's pictures just a cat staring.
And
at a
I
flag.
don't know what they do or like how to really tell what they are, because there's also just people that lurk around, and that's totally fine. Nothing wrong with lurking.
Weird, I
lurk a
can't
lot
do this
too,
because everything's
but-
like uber behind.
Vatican City.
only like a
Magoo,
couple
if
of
you're
seconds.
in person, please leave a chat. I would like to talk to you.
Storm Kings. That's the one at the top. It's the front one. Storm Kings. That's what I was told to put in
Yes,
front.
let's start. So everyone's aware. Dungeons and Dragons-ine.
That was our first one,
We
right?
started with Storm King's
Yeah.
Thunder. That was I gave them the option between Storm King's Thunder and Curse of Strahd because we have some horror adverse people in our group, and I didn't want to like turn anyone off. And everyone was like, "Sure, Storm King's Thunder sounds cool." And basically, the plot of Storm King's Thunder is you're an adventuring party in the Forgotten Realms. That's the other thing to mention here. I did want to say two things here. Number one, we are ranking all of these books. Personally, my opinion, as all of this is, as everything being stated here, it's all just our opinions. I don't think Wizards of the Coast has put out a bad 5th edition adventure. Some of them are easier to run, some of them require a little bit more DM elbow grease, but personally, I think there's good enough bones in all these adventures to run a fun adventure based on your group. The other thing I wanted to say is that I am the dungeon master and my word is law, so all these opinions are in fact fact. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true at all.
In my opinion, it's
but
an
yeah.
objective fact that all
Yes,
of these
an
books are
objective
ranked
fact.
exactly correctly, and you cannot say otherwise. This is a joke. Do not take it seriously. Opinions exist.
Yeah,
and they're
so
not always
Storm-
the same.
Yep. So Storm King's Thunder, basically, giants are ravaging Faerun, or the Forgotten Realms, where pretty much all the 5th edition adventures take place.
Wonderful sword coat.
And your party is basically tasked with figuring out why and stopping it. And there's like a big giant siege in one of 3 towns, depending on like what your DM chooses. You get to explore a whole bunch of Faerun, more than any of the other adventures, really. And then you kind of learn what's going on, why it turns out the giant ordning, or their like order of which like the giant like are ranked based on their type of giant, has been broken by their god, and they're all infighting with each other. And you kind of figure out that it's the result of a evil blue dragon that is manipulating everyone from the shadows. That's the other thing I legitimately want to mention. There will be massive spoilers for all of these adventures after the whole.
After
I spoil
spoiling
Storm
Storm
King's Thunder.
King.
Yeah, so I just
It's already.
I feel like it was pretty self-explanatory. We're gonna get into some spoiler
Boom!
territory, but
yeah, we're
Yeah.
gonna definitely get into some spoilers. We will be talking about endings, plot twists, stuff like that. For our current game, I am running some of the adventure books. So I won't get into super heavy spoiler territory just because I don't want the party to be spoiled and know what's coming up. But yeah, so for Storm King's Thunder, we had kind of this will be a going theme because we had a year-long campaign where we ran through 3 of the adventure books. We started with Storm Kings. So
Yes,
we
sir.
had
So-
Thok the Barbarian,
Yeah.
which was Eric's character. We had Bernard the Paladin, which was Nick's character. Fredrickson McFeltonsburg, which was Matt Swift's character. And then
I was Joseph.
you started with
I was Joseph.
you were
for Storm
Joseph
King.
Coyote,
Yeah, Joseph
the
Kaijo.
Astral Monk. Yep, the Astral Monk. And then
Back
Matt
when it
Allen
was
didn't
Unearthed
join us
Arcana,
until-
before they officially released it in
Yeah, this
Tasha's.
is before Tasha's.
Yes, that was an
He did
Unearthed
Unearthed.
Arcana one. I really wanted to play it because I am a big JoJo fan, and it is just JoJo Monk.
So Matt Allen hadn't joined us yet. He joined us in the middle of our 3rd campaign. So that's kind of why we're starting with Storm Kings, because he wasn't there for it, and I don't want him just to sit there. So yeah, what was your guys' thoughts on Storm King's Thunder?
I thought it was.
Brandon, why don't we start with you?
Oh,
Or Matt, you started.
Yeah.
Start with you.
since he started
Alright,
speaking. Oh, now the passed to him.
No, so, I mean, when it comes to my whole like D&D like experience before we ran Storm Kings, I think, you know, Ethan, you'd have like little get-togethers every now and again. We'd play through like a Call of Cthulhu game. It's just like a one-off, or I think we did Pathfinder for a bit there too.
It did Pathfinder.
Yeah. The
Also the Star Wars one.
oh my god, I just forgot the
was
name
kinda
of it.
fun. Star Wars
Storm
one.
Giant, Storm Kings.
Yeah,
Storm
Kings
King's Thunder.
Yeah, Storm Kings was my first like actual D&D campaign, and I thought it was a phenomenal one to get involved in. Because I came in not knowing like anything. Like I still don't. I'm not even gonna pretend to know that I know like 50% of what any class does. To be honest with you, there's so many different offshoots now, and they're all really cool. But we all went in with our backstories of like Frederickson McFeltonsburg was just like a subpar merchant. That was my entire backstory, and now you can see how our character development has developed so much going into our third campaign
Going into Alicia.
Or fourth. But yeah, I think it was a really good like jumping off point, and a lot of that you gotta give to Ethan there for some credit because he guided the whole group, and I think one thing that we kind of kept going up there, but I think one thing that we all kind of like settled on is that oh yeah, Storm Kings is great for like it's almost like a little bit of like a I don't want to say cookie cutter, but it kind of is like that cookie cutter adventure of like. This is the problem.
Like standard.
You guys are the solution. Figure it out. And I think it's a really good way to get exposed to a lot of different kind of like combat encounters. But when it comes to like, oh, there's so much leeway between what's actually good and what's actually evil. It's there's good, there's evil, and you guys are good, and you got to stop the evil. So it's very cookie cutter in that aspect. But honestly, like as an introduction into it and like getting into D&D, I thought it was phenomenal. And it lasted quite a while too. It had some good length.
Ironically, it was our shortest campaign. We only ran it for 3 months, which I'll get into when I talk about it a little bit. But no, I completely agree with you. I think when I think of Dungeons and Dragons, like what do I think of? I think of Dungeons and Dragons, and what's the next thing? Probably giants. So that's like the next big like power enemy that you can fight. But that's my thoughts. I'll share those in a second. Nick.
One more thing, just because he's here on my desk. And we talked about him. This was the first mini I ever painted. Frederickson McFeltonsburg, the sorcerer. It's coming in blurry, but he's got a little fireball.
Like a little
it was fun. I just thought that was a fun little homage. And Ethan's got some sick minis.
Yeah, give me one sec. I'll be right back.
I never painted it, but I do have my other character, which we'll get into with Strawn. I still have the mini for them, but they are not painted. They're still in the box. I never got around to it.
Yeah, so if we're talking about minis real quick, so I painted this one right here. This is a Frost Giant. This is like my first big paint here.
Oh boy.
This is in the campaign you encounter a Frost Giant ally by the name of Harshnag, or as we lovingly refer to him as Hash Browns.
We did call him
yeah, Hash Browns.
And for the final set, so we've been playing on Discord and online, but for the final session, I was able to get everyone together in December, and I brought Harshnag had died in our campaign. Everyone thought he was gone, and then I brought him back, and everyone's like, everyone was so pumped for that. And I painted that mini, and then Sam, my wife, who's a much better painter and artist than I am, she's been doing all the character art for Alicia, painted this ancient blue dragon mini right here, kind of show him off a bit.
Look at that boy.
And this is Imarith, who is the main villain of Storm King's Thunder. And so she painted that dragon, and that was kind of what everyone fought at the end of that campaign.
Oh,
which
also
we used
worth
Euroscape as our map because
we did.
Yep, I brought over my copy of Euroscape because I still have that.
Oh, I meant to. I didn't. I think I forgot.
You couldn't find it.
Yeah, you couldn't find it.
Oh, it was right after we
buried.
Yeah. Which is fine.
I also think it's worth pointing out that we did all of Storm King's Thunder with the exception of the last battle.
Without maps.
Theater of the Mind. No videos.
We're not using Roll20 yet.
Roll20.
Nope.
We didn't get to Roll20 until more than halfway through Strahd.
Yeah, Curse. Which, for those who do play D&D, like if you're wondering like what tools should I play with, it takes some time. Learn Roll20. It takes your adventuring from like a solid 6 to like a 9. Just being able to see a map and tactically plan things. But yeah, Matt, was there anything you didn't like about Storm King's Thunder?
See, it's like, how like you grow up and like you have that one movie that you really like.
It's really bad, but you like it anyways because you were a kid.
And
you don't care.
And like you can't see anything bad. Like this was my first campaign. I can't think of like anything bad that I didn't like about Storm Kings. It was cookie cutter, but I was for it. It was my first character. You developed. I liked it. I couldn't think of a bad thing. It was that's just me being a newbie, but yeah, I liked it overall.
Nick, your opinions.
Yeah, I think there were like some really cool moments throughout the campaign that I really like have always stuck in my mind. The Giant Siege was one of the like first like big combat encounters that we ever did, and it felt very like epic in the scale, and it was kind of neat to like go around all these fighting. You know, it felt a little bit. I think one of the cool things was that usually, like when we fight, we're on the same scale as what we're like fighting in. This one was so different in the way that like you needed assistance from like the town, from other, you know, from outside sources. We could not sit there and take down all of these giants that were coming into this town, and it gave an interesting flavor in enforcing like when, you know, what you need to do, what you need to address, you know, different parts of the town and that kind of stuff. And then the Oracle was the whole like conversation with the Oracle, because it ended up with hash browns. It ended up like as we escaped, you know, from that area, like it was another like big memorable moment. But I remember just sitting there. I mean, it was one of our first like, you know, I feel like that's a very classic like D&D, you know, like fantasy trope, like where you're like talking with this like mythical figure trying to answer questions. Like it's a very much like a searching, and you definitely made that a lot of fun, a lot of good conversations of trying to figure out what was going on. This Oracle not being helpful at all.
I hated him.
For some context, for those of you that don't know Storm King's Thunder, which I'll do a better job here for the next ones of explaining some stuff. Also, this is a adventure for 5th to like 10th or 11th level characters. So there is an adventure that brings you up from 1 to 5, but really the main adventure starts at 5. So what Nick's referring to is at the start of the game, there are 3 towns as the DM that you get to pick to have your players kind of go to. Bryn Shander in the north, Goldenfield, or Tribor. And depending on which town you choose, you get assaulted by a different type of giant. So in our game, we went to Bryn Shander and were assaulted by Frost Giant. Now you got to think a giant's like an 8 to like 12 credit like challenge rating, which that's high for a 5th level party. Like one giant will kill them easily. So, you know, you're absolutely right. I mean, that town, there's like 8 frost giants attacking it, and you are this little party of level 5 characters, and you're just like, oh no, what do we do? And then the Oracle about the midpoint of Storm Kings, you talk to an Oracle that kind of is the info dump. It's like, what's going on with the giants? And the Oracle tells you everything. And at the end, you get attacked by the blue dragon Imarith, which, depending on what you ask the Oracle, you may or may not figure out the name of the dragon. And as the dungeon master, I had like Harshnag sacrifice himself to get like the party out of there. So it was kind of, I feel like for our group, and again, these stories are very much like our group specific. You could have a totally different plot for your Storm Kings, but for our group, I feel like that was our first D&D group's like big memorable moment. Fredrickson almost died. He got breath weaponed by the dragon, and you were like 2 health away from outright getting killed by it. Harshnag got killed like temporarily. So it was like a huge moment for the party. But again, I can talk more about that later. Nick, was there anything you didn't like about Storm King's Thunder?
I think there are portions where, like, I think like the start of Elysia, the very beginning, I think you did a great job of setting it up where you probably have some storylines or, you know, some pieces. You definitely like opened up like, here's this thing happening here, this person's talking here, you know, you can kind of, and you just kind of left it open, like head that way. I know there's a section of Storm King Thunder that is kind of that like sandboxy area, but it definitely felt like you go from this town to go to this tower to fly to this town, you know, to do this thing and go there. And it felt like it wasn't quite like on the rails, but you knew that there was a pacing of the story and where to go. In the same way that Elysia, I think, has that, you know, you have in mind like where we're going to go. But it definitely gave the feeling of more of a sandbox. Like we actually have our, I don't know, our like
control,
our decision to kind of go where it feels natural to like where you're going. Where sometimes you like, I know I have this motivation because the story's telling me I have this motivation.
Yeah, for Storm Kings, I will say that was the first D&D campaign I had run ever. And obviously I've run like Call of Cthulhu. I ran a bit of Pathfinder, but so I was definitely getting my sea legs. My second.
Yeah, because there was the Humber one from like a long time ago that I was in too.
Yeah, okay, technically my second that we ended. So
that one didn't. I mean, that one was kind of rough though. That didn't go for very long.
Not Nick. Nick just went. Brendan, what was your thought of Storm Kings?
Well, being the second campaign that I played in, because
Brendan was part of my old one.
Technically third, but the second one I played in didn't actually really go anywhere. It was a Session 0, and that was it. And that's where my current character actually started. And he was originally the character for that, and I have reworked him many times. And now he's at a state that I kind of like, but that is unrelated. With Storm Kings though being the third in campaign, the second actual one that I played, it was definitely different. It was very, as Matt said, very like standard, very much like this is Dungeons and Dragons. This is you're fighting big monsters and you're saving the day because you're the good guys and you do the right thing. But I mean, sometimes that's what you want. So you want to be expected.
It's like a pro and a con at the same time.
Yeah, it's very kind of generic in a way, while still having some good twists about it and still keeping it kind of fun and light. But sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes you don't need to have this crazy convoluted 15-strain plot that all interconnects and twines. And sometimes you just want to be like, I'm gonna fight a dragon because killing dragons is cool. And that's what we did. We fought a dragon because killing dragons is cool.
And I think a lot of our characters were modeled so that way. Like it felt very much like even like Bernard was just a paladin who came in, and he's gonna save the day, and he's got his big hammer, he's taking guys down, and and it just felt Thok was just barbarian,
literally angry dude with an axe.
Like I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Joseph was just I punch things.
Yeah, the start of our D&D, first D&D campaign, I brought it up. I texted everyone, hey, do you guys want to play? Resounding yeses. So I'm like, okay, here's the adventure we're going to do. Make a character. This is how you make a character. And, which I will share a funny story at your expense on that one in a second, Nick. But this is great. But anyways, yeah, everyone just is like, we're playing a game. So that no one really thought about, like, backstories. Like, Eric is like, I'm an orc barbarian, half-orc barbarian.
Yep.
Nick, I'm a dwarf paladin. No one really had a backstory. And as the campaign went on and we got into Strahd and then ended with Rise of Tiamat, everyone started building more of those backstories. And kind of by the end, everyone had become like these fleshed out characters that were interesting and had wants and stuff like that. Here's the unfortunate story at your expense, Nick. So I didn't like walk anyone really. Well, I did walk people through character creation. I sent them a Session 0 doc with like rules that explained things. So everyone comes to the thing. And I looked at everyone's character sheet, and I was like, okay, like everyone's sheet looks good. I got to Nick's, and I'm like, Nick, you have a really low, I don't remember, it was like wisdom or something. It was like a 6.
I remember this.
Yeah. And you're like, yeah. I was like, if you want, you can just take like a 9, which is like the low end on that. Like, I don't want you to have like a -3 or whatever to your thing. And you're like, okay, real quick, let me roll this D20. And I'm like, what do you mean roll the D20? And you're like, well, yeah. So it turns out he rolled all his stats by rolling a D20.
Just straight D20.
And so normally you roll 4d6 if you roll.
Take the 3 highest.
And you take the 3 highest. So he like gave himself an uber handicap. So we very quickly corrected that. But we were all pretty much fresh for D&D, or most of us were pretty fresh.
Oh, that's great.
Brendan, anything you didn't like about Storm King's Thunder?
I'm thinking back to it, and really the only thing that sucked about Storm Kings was just our characters. But that wasn't really... Not that they were bad characters, it's just we didn't really know what to do or how to write a character for D&D or anything like that yet. We had the experience with it, so... That's really it. Like, I can't think of anything that was, like, bad.
Yeah, so on my end, kind of coming at this from the Dungeon Master perspective, obviously I have the book, I've read everything, I get all the backstory. So the first thing I'll say about Storm King's Thunder is Wizards, I think it's the first book, and I could be wrong, I think it's the first book that Wizards of the Coast laid out differently than their other adventure books. Like, if you look at, like, Rise of Tiamat and, like, Princes of the Apocalypse, it's really all over the place, and you have to, like, flip around depending on where your characters go. Storm Kings was like, here's a plot synopsis of what's going to happen. Your players are going to do this, and then this, and this, and this, and then it ends. And each chapter reflected that. It was very linear, the chapter set, which was nice when you're reading it because you're like, cool, they're going from this location to this location to this location. There wasn't this like in some of the adventure books, it's like I'll use this as an example, Curse of Strahd, because we'll talk about that. Chapter 1 of Curse of Strahd is like the background. Chapter 2 is the village of Barovia, where they start out. And then chapter 3 is Castle Ravenloft, which is kind of like the end game area. And you're just like,
what?
I don't give a crap about this right now.
Death House, which is like the intro to it, is the last thing in the book.
Yeah, it's like in the appendix. It's like
it's not even like a chat. It's literally in the. It's so weird.
Yeah, so Storm King started out like really easy to read, and I really appreciate that. So if you're a first-time DM, that portion is great. However, I will not say Storm King's Thunder is a good first-time DM book. And I will say that because Nick brought up, there's a section in this thing in chapter 3 where you get access to all of the Sword Coast. Or as I kept missaying it as the Storm Coast when we were playing that game.
Thematic for Storm King's Thunder, though.
Yeah, I kept saying Storm Coast, not Sword Coast. And when I say you get access to all of it, you get access to all of it. There is not a place in that area that your players can explore, and the book provides descriptions for every single location, from towns to like landmarks to forests and things that can happen there. And some things are more than others, like some things might get a page, other things might get a paragraph. And then kind of as a dungeon master, you have to fill those in. It's a sandbox. Sandboxes are naturally more difficult to run because your players can go really everywhere and anywhere and can very quickly derail what you prepare. So you got to think fast on your feet. And in my opinion, it's a little much for like a one DM to be able to like muster, like to know everything of what's going on. The other thing is not everything is very expounded upon. So like if you go to Waterdeep, which is this huge rolling city, you know, like the biggest city in all of the coast, there's like a page and a half of stuff. So you need to almost supplement that book with the Sword Coast Adventure Guide if you really want to bring in the stuff. As the players, I don't know if you guys felt like any of that area was underdeveloped, but as the DM, I definitely felt like going into it, it felt very underdeveloped. I won't lie. So basically what happened to the adventure is after you pick one of the 3 starting towns, which is another great thing about Storm King's Thunder, there are 2 sections where you basically get to choose your own adventure. So you pick one of 3 starting towns, Bryn Shander, Tribor, or Goldenfield. And then at the end of the adventure, you get to pick one of the 5 giant lords that the players will kind of face off against to get this key item that they need, this conch to let them talk to the storm giants. How the book is run, you pick one from each section. So there's a lot of replay value. So like you play it with one group and you're like, okay, we're going to do Bryn Shander, which is Frost Giants, and we're going to keep the Frost Giants being a villain, and they'll go into, you'll fight the Frost Giants at the end. Next time, you could be like, okay, we're going to do Goldenfield, and you're going to go up against the Sword Giants, the Stone Giants at the end. So there's
my favorite giant type, the Sword Giant. The
Sword Giant.
Animated sword.
Yes, there's just a lot of great replay value there, and I give Wizards some credit there that, you know, I could even run it with this group again, and they could have a totally different adventure because they have added that much replayability to it, which I think is fantastic.
That's
very
nice.
Yeah.
On the positive end, I definitely agree with everyone. It's a very cookie-cutter adventure. It's simple, but I like it because of that. There's not any, like, huge twists. I mean, you find out the dragon's the bad guy. You're just like, whoa.
Oh, wow, a dragon's the bad guy in Dungeons & Dragons.
There's a really cool scene towards the end of the adventure where you go to the Storm Giants' kingdom in Maelstrom, which is this, like, underwater, like, Atlantis city. And you go to talk to... Because one of the things is that the Storm King, Hecatan, is missing.
That was a cool moment for us, actually.
His youngest daughter is, like, in control, but his 2 eldest daughters are, like, in cahoots with the dragon. So you go to this area where they're, like, talking, and you have to convince them, like, this dragon's manipulating them. And Bernard, being a paladin, uses this Zone of Truth spell, and basically makes it so this ancient dragon has to tell the truth. Now, granted, I could have been a dick and been like, haha, legendary resistance, auto saves on it, but I failed to save, and I'm like, this is such a cool player moment, like, to let you guys come in and Zone of Truth her and just force her to reveal that she is in fact manipulating them, and that Saresta, the youngest of the Storm Giant princesses, finds out her 2 eldest sisters are villains in this whole plot, and the dragon flees. That was like the second very cool moment where I felt like all you guys felt like you just kicked ass that moment.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't even have a combat encounter. You just were like dropping the Zone of Truth, but doing a little bit of the spice on that one. So that was a good Bernard moment, that thing. What I didn't like about Storm King's Thunder, I hate Chapter 3. So at the end of Chapter 2, where you do like the sieges, where in Brinshander, Tribor, Goldenfield, there's like a zillion NPCs that help you, all of who give you different side quests. And the idea is you take those side quests and you run around the Sword Coast and complete them. As a newbie DM, I didn't like it. I thought it went kind of against like what the players' like main goal was the giants. If I reran it, I wouldn't run it this way again. But I kind of just picked one and had you guys roll with it, and then called Chapter 3 a wash. And the problem with Chapter 3 is there's so much going on in it. There's so many locations, and half of them don't have to do anything with giants. It's like, you find these hills, and there's some goblins there, and you kill them. And that's what you did in this area.
Can you find my cat up in the tree, please? She's missing.
Yeah, a couple of the areas were cool. Like there was like a port town you guys went to, and all these frost giants attacked, and you beat back the wave of them, and like 30 minutes later, another wave of frost giants show up. The party is almost done. The forces of this town are almost gone. So you guys just GTFO'd out of there and left them to their fate. But that was kind of a cool area. But not all of them are created equal. Again, as the dungeon master, it's pretty rough to keep track of everything. The other thing I didn't really care for, which I know Nick, you spoke positively of, was the Oracle. The Oracle's this big moment of like we learn all this stuff, but the book provides you like a list of questions the party will ask and the answers to give. And obviously the writers can't know, and this goes for all the adventures, the writers can't know everything everyone's going to think of. I mean, the party could be like, Oracle, what's your favorite sandwich? And as the DM, you have to be like, I don't know.
Tuna on rye.
Like, no one knew what to ask. It was like, who what's the ordning? What's broke the ordning? Why did the ordning break? And everyone was just like, how do we stop the giants? And I was like, I can't answer that. It tells me I can't answer that type of question. It has to basically be like simple answers. So there was a lot of the party going back out to Harshnag, who was like chilling in the temple and being like, what do we ask this thing? And me having to be like, maybe you should ask them what this is and how we do this and that. The other problem is you could only ask the Oracle like 5 questions a day. So the party would exhaust their questions and then have to spend like a day just chilling and then go back to re-ask the questions.
There for like a week.
Yeah,
you guys were there for 3 or 4 days.
And we couldn't figure out what to ask. We didn't know anything.
Because basically the big key information is you have to figure out like why the ordning broke, where the Storm King is, who the bad guy is, and how to stop the Giant Lords. And it gives you all of these answers.
Yeah, we kept getting hung up on like the was it
like
the
it was
father?
like side quest stuff too.
Yeah, it
like
was like
the up from Chapter 3.
Yeah, it was like the father of like the Cloud Giant or something who was in like one of the like flying castles, but we kept asking the Oracle, where is he? Because we really liked him.
Oh yeah, Parnast or whatever. Yeah.
What is Parnast? I can't tell you that. Where is Parnast? I don't know. Is Parnast a place? Yes. Where? I don't know.
Yeah, that was the other thing I didn't like about it. So Parnast and this guy, so you find a dead giant in here and its ghost comes back and talks to you. He is killed by his father there. His father and Parnast being a piece from Horde of the Dragon Queen specifically. And the book literally says, if you want to know more about this, buy Horde of the Dragon Queen and read about it. And I was like, I just spent $50 on this book, which I'll give this credit. The Wizards of the Coast books are expensive, but when you think you can get like 6 months to a year worth of content for a $60 book, like it's not that bad of a deal. But I was kind of like, really? You couldn't have given me a little bit of information about this stupid thing? But that's not really here nor there. The only other thing I will say I didn't care about it, I thought the final battle against Imarith, she's an ancient blue dragon. The party's at level 10. They can't fight and beat her. It's more or less impossible. So you get like all of these like storm giants helping you, which is pretty epic and cool. But I definitely feel like it takes a lot away from like the player agency. I mean, it was like basically King Hecate suplexed the dragon at one point, which was epic, and everyone was cheering and had tons of fun with it. So I'm ragging on it, but the part we still had tons of fun with it in the end anyway. So it's a minor complaint. I do feel like it does take a little bit away from the party. To round off my opinion, one thing I love, and I love this about all the adventure books, they're chronologically mapped together. So the reason Storm King's Thunder happens is because of crap that happens in Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat. Basically, the ordering breaks because the giant god is like, you people didn't do anything when the dragons rose up and they're your arch emissaries. F you, and I'm breaking your ordering, figure your stuff out. Which I think is great, because if you're playing with a long-running group and you play these adventure books every year, you actually get like this continuing story of the world with a lot of lore and history behind it. And I think that's fantastic. Now, in our group, we did Storm Kings before we did Rise of Tiamat, so I didn't really introduce any of that. But if you went in order from the Tyranny of Dragons books to Storm King's Thunder books, you get all of this kind of like extra backstory. So now that I'm done rambling for way too long, where do we want to tier rank this bad boy?
I was thinking about it, and like for nostalgia purposes, I want to rank it high, but I think realistically,
I feel like a B or an A sounds about right to me.
Yeah, I was thinking probably like a B, just because I love that it's cookie cutter, and sometimes you want that, but like you were saying about the last battle there, it took a lot of like the autonomy away from the player, especially with like the final fight. Like you actually don't have that much of an impact on it. So I think I would go B.
The Storm Giant doing all the work. You're like, yeah, go Storm Giant!
Yeah, literally. It's like, I killed this gargoyle minion as a Storm Giant suplex a dragon.
Storm Giant threw a lightning bolt and killed 5 of them. I killed 1!
And I should say here, like, I would rank these based on how we felt about all the adventures we've played. So, you know, obviously, F doesn't necessarily mean bad. It just means bad in relation to what we've done. But yeah, I'm at B with Storm Kings. Nick, how do you feel? You're the only one who hasn't said anything.
Yeah, no, I agree with B tier. I think that there are some things where you had to kind of finagle your way through and make it, you know, make sense for our group.
Yep.
It wasn't exactly super streamlined, but there were great moments. It was a great game to jump into, and created I think there were a lot of memorable and places there that I think, like, I mean, it ended up at the very beginning or whatever. That was the start of New Barovia.
Yeah.
And
that was the beginning of Fredrickson deciding to steal every
deed from.
Yeah. Fredrickson became a real estate Mongol. He owned so much property by the end of our 3 campaign stretch there. It was insane.
All by stealing deeds.
The adventure begins in this town called Nightstone for the first 5 levels. It's an okay little like starting adventure. I think you level up a little fast because you go from 1 to 5 in like a session and a half. But it's good. I liked it. It's fine. So yeah, I think B tier. We all agreed on B tier.
B tier.
Yep.
Everyone agreed B tier.
All right, let's rank this bad boy in B tier. All right, I believe the next one's Curse of Strahd.
Next one is Curse of Strahd. I'm just going to preemptively put it where we all know it's going, but we can still talk about it.
It's already in S tier. Curse of Strahd is probably going in S tier for everyone.
I don't think anyone needs to really deliberate.
Does anyone have any complaints before we talk about this with Curse of Strahd going in S tier?
I do have some statements about it.
This is no hot take here for anyone watching.
No, everyone says Curse of Strahd is the best thing ever, and I would agree.
I will say,
you had an you got an in there.
No, I will say
A tier.
I'm cool with the S tier for sure. My whole thing is, and so I really like high fantasy settings, and Curse of Strahd is very much more fantasy. Like gothic horror, dark fantasy
stuff.
So when it comes to the setting, when we first started off in Curse of Strahd, I was like, I don't know if I like this as much as Storm Kings, just because Storm Kings had that, like, you know, I was getting into it, cookie cutter high fantasy
generic,
vibe. But when it comes to like everything that goes on in Curse of Strahd, and you'll get to it in a second when you do like the kind of like summary of it. But it basically, all the shortcomings we mentioned for Storm Kings, it was like the exact opposite when it comes to being cookie cutter. So
Strahd is very
S tier's good with me. I'm good with S tier.
Sounds good for S tier for everyone that just preemptively rank. Yeah, so Curse of Strahd is an adventure. Is an adventure for level 1 to again like 10 or 11.
I think it's
level.
9.
No, it's 10. It's 10.
It's 9, it's 9
you know
10.
it might.
Because I think Healing Strahd gives you 10.
I think you're right.
It's either that or it ends at 10. You get 11 off of him. It's one of the two.
Yeah, it's something along those lines. 1 to 3, there's a little starting adventure called the Death House, which we'll talk about later. But basically, your party is whisked away to the lands of Barovia, a hellscape, essentially, constantly shrouded in mist and controlled by a vampire lord by the name of Strahd von Zarovich, who basically has the entire populace living in fear. You learn basically about Strahd. You take a mission to protect a young woman by the name of Irina Koyana, who has taken the love of Strahd. He's like fallen in love with her and wants her for himself. So you kind of take a mission to escort her away from this village of Barovia, which exists like right under Strahd's castle, Ravenloft. And basically you have to find a way out of Barovia, which means finding a way to beat Strahd. And yeah, so you do that by getting like different items that will help you defeat Strahd. You learn how to defeat him. There's a section where you go to this fortune teller and she like maps out like where these items are, and I'll get to that when I talk to that is
so
really
well
cool for replayability and thematic stuff.
Very well
and basically, depending on how your adventure goes, you'll kind of explore these different towns and different areas, and you'll end your adventure going to Castle Ravenloft to have your final battle with Strahd, defeating him once and for all. Well, I'll get to that in a second, but defeating him and saving yourself from Barovia. Nick had to step away for a second, but while he is gone, Matt, we'll change it up. Brendan, why don't you start on this one?
All right, so I've partially run it and I've read it, so I do know a little bit of the back end of Strahd, which is very well done, I'd say. Despite how clunky the chapters are set up, it is still well done. There's a lot of information about everywhere. And although Curse of Strahd is written in a very open-ended way, it's still such a small enough area that you don't feel like it's that open-ended from the DM's perspective. Because you can just be...
order of
there's definitely like an order of it, and it's not nearly as big as the entire Sword Coast with like 200 cities or whatever. Like there's like 3 towns, like 4 other random places, and Castle Ravenloft, and like that's it. And although the party is open to go wherever they want, it's all right there. It's all laid out very well. A lot of information about it. It's very well done. Death House is something. It's good at setting the tone, terrible at setting you up for Strahd. Has no correlation.
Now, see, I really like Death House, but I'll get to that in my...
I think it's a fine one-shot. I just don't think it has anything to do with Strahd other than setting up the tone.
Death House was rough, because I think it was just Brendan and I that ran through it, because everybody had
I ran through it with Nick as just a one-shot, because we wanted to play, and Matt, you joined for that game, and that was the first game where I TPK'd the party.
Jeez.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know Brendan and I struggled with it, and then I joined. I literally saw you and Nick like on Discord, and I was like, I wonder what they're up to, and I hopped in your call, and you're like, hey, we're running Death House, you want in? I was like, sure.
Yeah.
And then we died. It was awesome.
I love Death House.
It's a good time, but
it's tough.
Yeah, it's very good at setting the tone and getting you ready for the world of Barovia, but it has nothing to do with it.
I will say that is one thing about Curse of Strahd. If you run Curse of Strahd properly, Curse of Strahd is hard as hell.
Yes.
It is a brutal adventure.
It is meant to do that, though, which is very cool. Like, literally of the big spoilers, but one of the first things the party will encounter after the village of Barovia is the Bone Grinder, a big windmill with 3 coven hags together.
Oh, God.
And that encounter is literally designed to tell the party you should not fight everything. You should just leave.
We fought him anyway.
And we still fought him, but we came back as the
You guys didn't go to the Bone Grinder and ended up coming back with like a group of people to it. So I ran Bone Grinder Bone Grinder is legit supposed to be run. When I played with Brendan, I ran Bone Grinder straight, and oh my God, Bone Grinder it's a bone grinder.
If they did the classic, we're gonna go rally the nearby town because these witches are kidnapping all the kids and baking them into pies. So clearly they must be angry. And then that was a big mistake. Gave them way too much an action economy for the witches to handle. But So it's a really fun adventure. There's so much replayability because all of the stuff you have to find is essentially randomly placed in a different location every time you play it. You literally draw it out of a deck of cards to figure out where they are. There's so many different angles you can run on Strahd, because the first chapter literally gives you like the entire backstory and motivation and everything Strahd wants to do, and so you can run with any aspect you want with it. I know when I wanted to run Strahd like Cell from Dragon Ball, because he has that very I'm so great and important and no one meets my standards but myself kind of character. But when we played it, it was a very Dracula style, kind of seductive.
I tried to run a more suave and he's like your buddy, because he knew he could just crush you in like one attack. And then as the party begins to get more and more powerful and to thwart him, he begins to almost become like unhinged and lose it. That's what I was going for. But
which is a very
successfully.
It's very cool that you can do that with Strahd. There's a lot of aspects.
Anything you didn't like about Curse of Strahd, Brendan?
Death House, but Death House is it's not the fault of Death House. It's a good one shot. It's just not a good starting point for Strahd, I don't think. I think it sets the tone, but not the story.
All right, Nick, how did you feel about Curse of Strahd?
Overall, very good. That's cool. It's a cool guy.
Yeah, I don't know what was said already, but it was definitely a just the theme of it is very like, because it's separate from what your normal D&D is, it does it very well. And I just remember coming in the first time because I think I missed the first week.
Yeah,
and so I had to get like entered in.
That was actually a fun moment though when you came in.
Yeah.
I had a good time with that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and just some of those like I think the theme helped probably you as a DM set up some of those moments where the smoke is in there. This forest, this very like mystical place, Barovia. There's always eerie. It always is. It's like one of those paintings that always feels like it's looking at you. It felt like Barovia and Strahd, like the villain is always there. In Storm King's Thunder, you feel like you have to work to get to. It's almost like he's on the mountain far away, and you have to eventually like get to there. But it always feels like Strahd is this ever looming, always around the corner, always can mess with you. And that kind of feeling of it is very like thrilling as a player, because you're always on edge of what should happen or what's going to happen. I always have to cover my bases. People who are perfectly fine and maybe helpful, you're skeptical of them, or maybe you reacted would, because you just feel like, Strahd's using everyone and everybody has a motive. And so I think that was a lot of fun. Like coming back to, I'm trying to remember, was it like a chapel, or it was where
the church in
like Otto was?
Oh no! Oh yeah.
Maleki, it was
the one that looked fine the first time we went there, and then we came back to it, and it was like all decrepit, and I'm trying to remember.
Is it the monastery where the abbot is?
Yes,
is
the abbot.
Yeah. I think so. Because the first time, because the first time we met it,
that's what it is. The abbot.
It seemed all right.
Yeah, Otto's abbot.
Yeah. And then it got super creepy, like the second time coming back. And in some of those moments, you just don't get anywhere else. And so every setting, whether it was like a new, the monastery, or every, little piece, it felt like there was just a lot of significance to every, either the, what was the Amber Temple, what was the like final. Yeah, like that was such a cool place. And then obviously Castle Ravenloft was a lot of fun, and there's a lot of hype into entering into there, and so that adds to the excitement as well. But it just was a very, very memorable spot, like I felt like I could remember, each of these different settings more than just, a random tavern or a little city that, was up in the north of the Sword Coast.
Some random farming village of the Sword Coast versus any location in Strahd.
Yeah.
They're all unique in their way.
Anything you didn't like, Nick?
It was spooky.
It was spooky.
I didn't like how scary it was.
That is a totally okay thing.
It was so scary.
Yeah.
No.
It was one of those ones where, like, we got the, book, under our belt, and so this one definitely felt like, it was hitting stride a little bit, and so, the story was, I always felt like, the story was on my mind. We always had an objective that we were trying to accomplish, and it kept I think out of anyone, the story, felt like it was moving, constantly. And I never feel like there was a lot of, downtime to the story. Which, I mean, maybe you just like to fool around and that kind of stuff, and explore. Maybe that, Strahd's not that. But it is, a fast-paced, lots of stuff going on in Barovia. And so if that could be, one of those, what are my weaknesses, it's because I care too much kind of things. But,
nitpicking it, perfection.
Right.
Matt, what about you? What did you like and dislike about
so, overall, I'll actually kind of start with something that could be a dislike but also a like. Is that I don't think Curse of Strahd is very friendly to newbies.
No.
So I'm really happy.
100% agree with that.
I'm very happy we made it our second campaign. Because it's one of those things that we had a very, very nice DM. We didn't TPK. I don't think anybody died at all.
No one died.
Close encounters. We probably should have many times in Curse of Strahd.
Oh, definitely. There are so many scenarios where we should be dead and none of us did.
Yeah, and that could be very discouraging, especially because at that point, we had started heavily investing in our characters, and even now when we start a new character, we get pretty invested in it, so that could kind of suck. But also, it's kind of that's part of the fun of D&D too. Is okay, you thought out this whole character, but really it's all up to the dice rolls, and gauging how dangerous is what I'm about to walk into going to be. And if you make a poor judgment call or the dice just aren't in your favor that day, then you die. And I think that's something that kind of hit when we were playing Curse of Strahd. I was like, oh no, I don't want to die. But luckily Ethan liked us, so we all stayed alive. So that's a pro and a con. Pro, and it's a pro in that if you're more experienced, it makes the game way more fun. But if you're a newbie, I could see that it would be very unenjoyable because it's almost anxiety inducing. Oh, we have to go get the Tome of Strahd now. That sounds like I'm gonna die.
So it could be a little bit sunlight. Where could that be?
And then I think the only other thing, and this is definitely just a me thing, just the setting overall, kind of the whole
that's fine
dark fantasy, which I like it in smaller doses. So the fact that it was always looming, and then Strahd, the way you portrayed Strahd, Ethan, was perfect, because I genuinely hated the guy because he was always there and always so nice, but also so evil at the same time. So a lot of things
when your party arrived in Barovia, he gave you guys a bottle of wine.
He gave us free wine, the best wine too.
The best wine we've ever had. But yeah, just I remember getting out of a crazy encounter or something, and then being on the road for a day, and then we pop up to the next town, and there he is waiting in a fucking carriage for us, and we're oh hey bud, how's it going?
Yep.
I almost died, but I guess you're here.
Overall, I really, really enjoyed it. It really you had consequence to your actions. You had to be a lot smarter. That's when we started implementing Roll20, so combat was less theater of the mind, more you have to be positioned in the right spot. You have to be doing the right things. So I definitely enjoyed it overall. I mean my cons are really just things that I think are more subjective. Really, do you like the setting, or is it too hard? But I think at that point, I kind of want to play through it again, to be honest with you. Now that I have. Because we're probably pushing almost a year after we did Strahd at this point. Now that
over because we ended in May of last year was the end.
Oh dang, perfect. Yeah.
I mean, now that I have that extra year of D&D experience, which basically more than doubled what I had when I went into it. I'd love to play through Strahd again with a different perspective, and then no punches pulled. TPKs out on the horizon every session. We never know when somebody's gonna die. But yeah, I overall liked it.
Yeah, so my thoughts as the DM, I agree with Matt on you that Curse of Strahd, because it's gothic horror and because of its difficulty, you got to definitely know your party going in, and it's an adventure you want like a buy-off on. And Curse of Strahd's got some pretty dark themes in it. Like there's hags that are eating children, and there is like torture and implied rape and all of this other stuff that is in the source material. And I don't know if I hit on too much of that stuff when we played it, but
definitely the eating kids part.
The kid pies was definitely like a
oh man, I remember that too, because we like 2 or 3 of us bought the pies and ate them.
Mm-hmm.
Which admittedly I did it knowing full well what they were.
Brennan knew.
I knew because I had read it already. But I still had a good time with it. I was like, you know what? I know what this is. I'll do it. It'll be fun. And then someone else ended up joining me on it.
Who was that witch that was in the like tree house? She had like baby Strahd.
Oh
yeah. Yeah, she was like one of the big bosses that you guys actually kicked her butt pretty handedly. I was a little disappointed, but
it felt very tense though. We had it felt very hard.
Yeah, that's one thing I will say, like, everyone's been singing the praises of Strahd, and of all the adventure books, Strahd's the best villain. He's always there. He's charismatic. There's multiple ways to play him. He actually feels like he's directly impacting the party, and his existence is the reason your life is miserable. Like Imarith for the Giants, she's just like the big bad that you find out is evil in Storm Kings, and you go stop her. Where like Strahd is immediately there and immediately in your face, and he can disguise himself as other characters, and he can even help the party. There's even instances in the book where like you could be like, Strahd's gonna pop in and like assist the party here. So you're even like, what is this guy's end game? And his end game is basically just like, I'm bored and I'm gonna do what I want. And what's really cool is the book gives a lot of reasons that Strahd's doing what he did. Now, I gave a lot of emphasis and focus on the Irina Koyana hook, and I did a lot more with her as a DM than the book tells. Basically, you pick Irina up and you take her to an area and you throw her in a pool and she goes away forever, essentially is what happened. I made Irina like a full fleshed out character, and she actually ended up being a character in our next Rise of Tiamat game as well, and was like a huge NPC for the party. Probably, would you guys say Irina was the biggest NPC that the campaign had?
Probably.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Besides Ability, which you hated, which was Matt, the bane of Matt.
When we were talking about what I disliked about Storm King's Thunder, I was like, probably meeting Melody, but really I didn't hate it. It was just a funny character moment.
She's my own creation. She has nothing to do with the adventure book either. She's just there to be an ass. But yeah, so all the characters in Strahd are awesome. Like, they're very memorable. Strahd's memorable. Irina's memorable. Her brother Ismark is memorable.
Oh, the shopkeeper and his brother or cousin or whatever in the first city. He's very memorable because he's just like, I'm a dick. No one else is selling stuff, so I'm just gonna crank the prices like 10 times. Yeah. Good luck buying it somewhere else, nerds.
Yep. The Mayor of Valeki and Lady Watcher and their like civil war that they have. Yeah. That's memorable. The Abbot and Krezk is crazy memorable. The Wizards of Wine Winery, the characters there are memorable. And there's just so many. I guess if I look like compared it to Storm Kings has 5 times the amount of areas, but only like 1 or 2 of them are memorable. Curse of Strahd has like 8 areas. All of Curse of Strahd's areas are memorable. And as the DM and you're reading through the book, you're like, oh, I want him to go here. I want him to go here. You want them to go everywhere. And this is another positive, is the amount of replayability. As Brendan mentioned, at the beginning of it, you get a fortune read to you, which gives you the location of 3 important items to defeat Strahd and an ally who will help you beat Strahd. All of these are random, though. As the DM, you can hand choose which ones you want, which I did because I wanted to kind of extend out and touch as much of Strahd's world as we could. But it's great replayability, and some of the items you might find in like a locked chest in someone's house, or an NPC might have it and you have to get it from them. So there's just so many different ways to go. Some of the items can even be in Castle Ravenloft, forcing the party to revisit the castle on more than one occasion. One of my disappointments is I made Ravenloft like the end dungeon, and there's so many nooks and crannies to Ravenloft, so many secret areas, so many floors to explore, and you guys scratched like 15% of it. Yeah. And I would actually tell DMs who are running it, put an item in Ravenloft and force the party to go there. Force the party to confront Strahd early and really see how powerful he is and strike the fear, his like fear into them. It's just such a fantastic adventure. It's got a great story. This has been a big discussion, kind of getting to negatives. There's been a lot of talk about its depiction of the Vistani people, which are like these Romanian like surrogates that are in Barovia. If you get the revamped version of Curse of Strahd, they've taken care of a lot of that and helped quite a bit. If I have to give Curse of Strahd any major complaint, it would be book layout. It is hard to find information in Curse of Strahd. The book doesn't even really tell you how to beat Strahd, like, itself. You actually have to go to his journal, which is written in a funky handwriting font, read it to determine that you beat Strahd by staking him to his coffin, essentially. Like you do a normal vampire. But you have to figure that out, because in Strahd's stat block, when he's defeated, he turns to mist and goes back to his coffin to regenerate. Which means you have to go to his coffin while he's regenerating, stake him, and then he's defeated. It took me forever to find out. I was like, how do you beat this guy? Like, there's nothing in this book that says how you beat him. You have to read the Journal of Strahd at the end of the book to find out how to beat Strahd. They could have done a better job of laying everything out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that's a small complaint. With the actual adventure itself, I don't really have anything massively negative to say about it. It's very much know your group before going in. If you're people who don't like the mature themes and the gothic horror element, you won't like Curse of Strahd. Don't play Curse of Strahd. But if you want someone who, like a group that wants a good villain, a bit of a sandbox, lots of replayability, you'll love Curse of Strahd. There's a huge fan community for Curse of Strahd. A lot of stuff I added to the game, like go on Reddit and type in like how to run Curse of Strahd Reddit, and you will find hundreds of posts of people expanding on different aspects of Barovia and Strahd and Irina.
One of my friends in his WoW guild is playing through it, and they're almost done. They're actually right at the end. One of the things that his DM did is there is literally a Reddit post on like the Curse of Strahd Reddit or whatever it is, detailing essentially how to take the Tome of Strahd, which, as far as the base book is concerned, is just you find it, you read it, you're done. Congratulations. But instead it takes it and turns it into a fun flashback. You get to play through the book of Strahd. Here's how to run that. Here's what to do. How to play that out. What the players can do. And some like bonuses you can give them for doing that.
Yeah, Curse of Strahd has the best player community stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it just shows as a testament of how good the adventure is. Like, people want to expand on this fantastically written adventure. Wizards just came out with Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, which just adds to it. So if you buy Curse of Strahd, buy Van Richten's to get some extra stuff to add to it, and you'll have tons of fun with it for a long while. And Matt said, I agree. I would love to run through it again. It's a great adventure. S tier all the way. That's no hot take. I don't think there's anyone that will. Well, I mean, there's someone who will disagree, but I think most people agree it is a top tier adventure.
Oh yeah.
Our characters were also much better with Curse of Strahd as well.
Yes, they were. What's our next adventure on there, Brendan? Because I don't have the stream.
Rise of Tiamat. That's the third one we did. Yeah.
Rise of Tiamat. So Rise of Tiamat. I will. Here's the synopsis here. So Rise of Tiamat is technically the second half of a 2-adventure series called The Tyranny of Dragons. The first part, Horde of the Dragon Queen, takes the players from levels 1 to 8, and Rise of Tiamat takes the players from 8 to about 15. I ran it all the way to 20, which you can do, because the final battle is a bitch, but we'll get to that in a second. Essentially, Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat chronicle the rise of the dragon cult, who are looking to obtain the 5 chromatic dragon masks, which they can use to summon the evil dragon goddess Tiamat, who will basically take over the world and make everyone her slaves, because that's what cultists do. Rise of Tiamat has you basically trouncing all around Farron, or the Sword Coast, again, to figure out what the dragon cult is doing, stop them, gather allies, and then take the battle to their base and stop them from summoning Tiamat, or in the case of probably 90% of the adventures that run this, face off against the big evil dragon bad herself, because what's an adventure called Rise of Tiamat if Tiamat herself doesn't make an appearance? So like I said, this adventure will really, if you run both books, will really take you from 1 to 15 or 1 to 20. So it's a full meaty adventure. Real quick segueing, because we haven't played it, we didn't play Horde of the Dragon Queen, we jumped into Rise of Tiamat. Kind of how I ran the adventure is Storm Kings took us from 1 to 10. I reset everyone's character levels for Strahd, and then Strahd picked up with Rise of Tiamat at their current level.
Which just makes sense because of how Strahd works.
Yeah, it really does. So
Which
Rise
worked out.
or Horde of the Dragon Queen, I can talk a little bit about. We haven't played it. I won't get into long. I almost as a DM bought Horde of the Dragon Queen when Strahd ended, told you all to make new characters, and then ran Horde of the Dragon Queen with you guys as different characters, going concurrent with Strahd, where your main characters are in Barovia, and ending Horde of the Dragon Queen with all of your characters dying, but managing to get all the information they need to the Council of Waterdeep to stop the Dragon Call. That was going to be my idea, but I didn't end up doing that.
That would have been interesting.
Mildly regret it. But
a little bit of Rogue One.
Yeah, kind of a Rogue One. So Rise of Tiamat, let's go ahead and start talking. Oh no, I'm still talking about Horde of the Dragon Queen. I'm going all over the place. It was the very first adventure published by Wizards when they released the player handbook. It's actually by Kobold Press. I don't even think like the Wizards team wrote it. It's got a lot of issues from what I've heard, but I've also heard it's a very easy adventure to run for people. So Brendan, if you want to just lop that in, I haven't played.
Yep.
I don't really want to rank it. If I had to rank it just off gut feeling, I'd probably put it in like the C or B category, just from the things that I've heard about it. Some people hate it. Some people say it's the worst of all the adventures. But I don't know, and I'm not going to make that judgment. So Rise of Tiamat. Nick, we started with you for Strahd, right?
No, you started with me with Strahd because he was busy dealing with.
That's right. Nick, you start with us for Rise of Tiamat.
Yeah, Rise of Tiamat was fun. Getting to do a little bit of a higher level stuff. That was a lot of fun playing as a bard. Getting to do lots of different spells at your disposal. All the other ones, you don't get to be that high pretty often, and so it was fun to have lots of stuff, that you don't get to use, all that often. So just running a higher level campaign is a lot of fun. But I think there were a lot of like neat story moments that we had in there. With like the mask mechanic was a lot of fun. Like being able to like a little bit of a collection, kind of like we get in Strahd, like get all of these items. But I like that as a quest. The feeling of like always getting there but not yet, like being able to get it, like always being collected anyways, you're just out of your grasp. That part, you're like, I know it's going to happen, and you're like, I wish, maybe we could just really, grasp on it and see what happens. But just like, especially towards the end, I think that was some of the. It made it epic enough.
Hey, has joined us. Perfect timing because we're talking about.
Rise of
Tiamat, which is the one you joined us halfway for.
Yeah, just as you joined us halfway through our discussion. Hey!
Yeah, there we go. Woo!
I'm keeping it on
thematic.
The right path.
Yeah.
Thematically.
Yeah.
So Nick, continue with what you were saying.
But I think for anyone, this one felt the like epicness that to like end this kind of trilogy of stories. Like it rose the scale high. You fight dragon or giants, kind of things, but you're like, it's beatable. Strahd's hard, but eventually, like you figure it out, and you felt like you could battle him a little bit. Like Tiamat was, for one, felt like you cannot take. Brendan is disappearing.
Yeah, Brendan put his hand on his camera.
But
Screener must have slipped out.
Oh my goodness. Not the wiener.
Not the wiener. Sorry, Nick, continue.
But like, not being able to get the masks, this ritual is about to happen. You're coming in trying to interrupt it, and then Tiamat makes it. In this case, Tiamat, makes it out, and the fight definitely felt like we were about to, this wasn't going. There was no, even at such a high level, there was no way could with. And so it raised the stakes high. I loved the big war on the inside, making our way in, seeing like dragons. This is Dungeons and Dragons. Here you don't get to see the dragon part all that often. Mostly dungeons. And this part we had, dragons and spades. So it was just so cool. A lot of cool moments that you were able to bring in, these other fights that it felt like this is a big war. It isn't just 5 dudes coming to take down, Tiamat or whatever. And that it really was the world was coming alongside of us, and it's, a mayor of a town asking you to do something for you. And so I really enjoyed that about Tiamat. The stakes were a lot higher than all of the other campaigns that we've done.
What you didn't like about Rise of Tiamat?
I think out of any one, leading up to Tiamat, it was another feeling of on the rail of this is you're this. You got to go to these masks. The masks aren't going to be attainable. You're going to get to the ritual at the end, and there may be some other things that are along the way, but it definitely was very clear cut as to this is what's going to happen to get to Tiamat. And
yeah, I will say on that point too, though. I think Ethan did a really good job of weaving in everybody's personal story, because Rise of Tiamat is really where everybody's character started taking off. We were getting there in Strahd, but it wasn't until Rise of Tiamat that everybody kind of had a fleshed out this is an actual
this is my
person
character, this is where I'm from, this is what I'm here for.
Moment.
Yeah. And I think I share that same kind of sentiment with you, Nick, where it's oh, we're going to get this dragon mask. They faked this one too, those bastards. Well, on to the next one.
Okay.
But
they faked that one. Who could have seen it coming?
They got us 5 times in a row.
They really pranked us, bro.
But,
is Ashton Kutcher gonna come on with this camera crew? Yo, you got pranked.
Ashton Kutcher comes out from behind a.
Yo, what up? You got pranked, bro.
But no, I think Ethan did a good job kind of weaving in a lot of the character backstories. That's where we had Thok met up with his whole band of warriors. We had Fredrickson turn into an actual wormling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we have Wesley, who was originally what Cool Matt here joined in as. And we had a falling out, and Wesley became a villain, and it was crazy. But I think it's one of those things where it's Storm Kings was super cookie cutter, and then Curse of Strahd was very sandbox, and this was smack dab in the middle, and it goes to the creative liberty of the DM to make that fetch quest, which is essentially what the bulk of the middle of Tiamat is. You can make it super interesting with character driven subplots. And I think that's what I meant. It was my favorite part of the whole thing was that middle part. Granted, leading up to the final battle, that whole war zone was that was one of my favorite battles, for sure. But that middle stretch where everybody was getting their backstory fully fleshed out, that was my favorite part of it, because it gives you that creative liberty, because you're moving around a whole bunch anyway.
Yeah. Anything Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say I like coming in like the 7th Ranger in every Pokemon in every Power Ranger season. Who has none of the emotional attachment to anything that's going on, and just shows up to be the Green Ranger and kick some ass and then turn evil. I was the actual evil. Yeah, turn evil, or turn so good that it's basically evil. It's really hard to tell.
That is what happened. So good, he's evil.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting, Matt, because you did come in halfway through the adventure, roughly. So, from what you played of Rise of Tiamat, what was kind of your favorite things or things that you didn't like about it?
Because he came in after Cassie.
Yeah, I came in after it. Yeah, so I was kind of halfway through everything. I'd say that my favorite parts were, I liked I don't know. I think because I'd never played a module before. everything I'd ever played was homebrew before that. So like it was, yeah. So for me, I was just like, oh wow, this world's really full, like really fleshed out really well. I liked the inner party stuff. I liked, like I said, coming in as someone who didn't watch it all happen and me asking questions as a la the audience that didn't exist, being like, why would you do this, or what about this obvious thing that might not seem so obvious? And it's just like it was really fun. So I liked that. I liked the kind of moral ambiguity of the game in Rise of Tiamat towards the end. Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, we definitely need to stop Tiamat from rising, but like how we do it is kind of up to us, and we might have to like break some eggs, and we're cool with that. My favorite part, I think, was after Wesley had left and I was playing Jax, was either A, asking you to describe everything without sight as a descriptor.
Yes.
Just keep bugging you about it. And but that trip into the creepy like land of whatever.
In the Fae?
Oh,
yeah, we
yeah,
went
I
to
liked
Fae.
that a lot. I think that was a lot of fun.
That was really
My
cool.
ruin my voice lich
Yes.
conversation.
Creepy
Oh my
lich guy.
gosh. So here's an aside on this one. So the part you go to Fae, which is like this island evil nation to try and get their help, and you don't talk to a lich, you actually talk to the vampire, and I'm like, that's lame. I want you to talk to like the leader of Fae. I want you to talk to Zastab. So I'm gonna have him talk to you. So I did this lich voice, and it was like, it was rough. And I'm like, they'll probably talk to him for 10 minutes. I think you guys talked to him for like an hour and a half, and I did do this voice the entire time. And literally by the end of it, they were just like, F for your voice, Ethan. Like the next day at work, I could barely talk. It was fantastic.
If you know what fry screaming is, that's basically what the voice was basically like a very talking fry scream for people that know what those are.
But props to the DM for sure on that one.
Yeah, my voice was janked. So Matt, anything you didn't like about Rise of Tiamat though?
I think we didn't really get. This is the only thing I'll say. I'm big into Dungeons and Dragons lore. I like a lot of that stuff, and we didn't get into a whole lot of like, at least for when I jumped in. So it might have happened before, and I didn't see it. It was that all of the dragons, all of the dragons have like ecology that come with them a lot of times. Like they live in swamps, they live in firelands. Their lairs have certain stuff that goes on in them, and it affects the wildlife in this particular way. And really get into dragons as elemental beings. We didn't, at least when I jumped in, we didn't get to do it a whole lot. It was kind of like, oh, it's a black dragon. Go, it's black. It's black dragon.
We didn't get into that either.
Yeah.
So like,
I think the closest we had was we fought an ice dragon in an ice biome, and that was it.
Yep.
Yeah. So like I don't think the module does a whole lot of like really putting that into the game and like working that into like how you defeat them or talk to them should you want to, and their temperaments and stuff like that. It's mostly just dragons bad, except for these good ones. All right, cool, rock and roll.
You know, I never really thought about it that way. You bring up a great point, Matt, because I won't lie, I don't know a ton about like the inner workings of D&D's lore, so that might be part of it too. But the book really doesn't get into it either. They're just like, okay, in this section of the cave, you find a black dragon and 6 cultists, and you fight them. And then in the next section of the cave, you find a green dragon, and you fight it. And no, you're absolutely right about that. It's just like the book's just throwing dragons at you, but it doesn't really get into why or like what these dragons actually are. It's a good point.
What they're doing, why
every
they're
dragon is so different.
Yeah.
And the fact that Tiamat's there, and they're right to be like, yo, if Tiamat's gathering all these dragons together, it's a really big deal. But the reason it's such a very big deal is because these dragons wouldn't normally be in the same place at the same time.
Right.
Like a black dragon doesn't live in the same place that a red dragon would. A blue dragon doesn't live in the same place a white dragon would. The ecology is so different. So like if they're all together, it's a big a deal, but you would want to see a little bit more of that.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Why don't we pop up to you, Matt, other Matt, and Matt Swift, and why don't you kind of started on some of the stuff that you liked with like the character backstory and stuff. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or do you want to hop into what you didn't like about the adventure?
I also like that there's the option to kind of get to like high level D&D, which I mean we've talked about it before, where like the golden spot for like encounters and combat and stuff like that is I think you always say it's like levels
5
like
to 10?
7, like 5 to 10,
Like
7
5 to 10.
12
Yeah,
or
that's 5 to
somewhere
10
in there.
range usually.
But I think it's cool that this is like fleshed out enough that you can take it to like max level and you can start using things like wish or things like that, which created some really cool things that you just otherwise wouldn't be able to do. But dislikes, I think there you know, it happened in like Storm Kings too, where there's just a little bit of a lull every now and again, like Nick was saying, if you go to a mask, oh no, like this one's fake, they got us. But I think the one thing that really stuck out is the session that ended right before we fought Tiamat. Ethan, you'll be able to touch more on this from the DM's perspective, but it seems like the lead up to Tiamat, not just like the whole campaign lead up, like literally the physical lead up of getting to that location, going through this insane battlefield, literally almost dying on the way to Tiamat, was like super intense. And then you can go in and basically just like not fight Tiamat and have the whole campaign end. And I thought it was like, I feel like it should be like, even if you do go that route, which would make sense, you're preventing a god from entering the realm pretty much. It should have something more than just like, all right, pop these dudes in the head to make them stop doing the ritual, because that's essentially what it was. And I'm happy that we ended up rolling with it doesn't matter, Tiamat came in anyway, but I think that's my biggest gripe, is that like if you do it that way, the way that as like, you know, rules is written for the campaign, you could basically just not fight Tiamat and it's like the most anticlimactic ending ever. So I think that's my biggest gripe with the whole thing.
Yeah, and I wonder if even like that last part there, like if it was a little bit more puzzly, and that there was some sort of like
a
challenge to try to figure out the ritual,
like
rather than kind of like
you had to come up with a rate.
Like the ritual is going to happen.
I will preface this too. I sort of fucked that up as the DM and didn't include as many guys that are doing the rituals as should have been there. But regardless, you guys, as powerful as you were, and even if you came in at level 15 instead of level 20, those enemies are like one-shottable by you, even at that high of a level.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a level 20 sorcerer with fireball, so I mean, like...
Yeah, so no, I completely, I hear what you guys, and I agree. The big battle that was all me, I homebrewed that actually isn't in the book at all.
Loved it.
You technically just get dumped in the Well of Dragons, and it's like, okay, go through these chasms. And
what about Peter, or whatever his name is?
Peter is also, Peter is a 7-page NPC in the Rise of Tiamat book, all about the life of this random guard that you have to deal with. There's this random guard named
just
Peter
rolled amazing.
The whole battle was like rolling that 20.
He was great. He did a lot of work in that fight. Literally rolled like 4 nat 20s in a row. He was just some dude that we met, and we're like, "Yo, his name's Peter now. We're calling him Peter. What up, Peter?"
He guarded the bathrooms of the council chamber. That's how we met him.
Like, he literally did nothing important.
He ended up marrying the girl who got the sun sword or whatever. At least that's what I have in my head canon.
Yeah, I think so.
I know he might have married. I think he did marry Irina.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Yeah. And then Irina stepped in and started taking over New Barovia.
Yeah.
That was a good time.
That was a fun time.
It was a good. I liked. I will say, oh yeah, that's the other thing that I liked about it. That we didn't. That's not in the module. That was really fun. Is the epilogues, and everyone just like having their own lovely epilogue. I think that's super fun.
Yes, if I as a DM can recommend anything to new DMs, if you do a long campaign where like people play with characters for a year, do an epilogue. Like, work with your players, figure out where they want to go, because like I feel this way. I think Matt, you said this. Like, of all the of a year of D&D, an epilogue with one tiny encounter at the very end that was like a throwaway encounter was like maybe the top 3 D&D sessions we did.
Oh yeah,
and then everything came full circle.
It was insane. Ethan, you went out, you had like, it was almost like an hour-long monologue of what had happened to everybody, and then like we threw it back because we, you know, I've said before that we started off like theater of the mind, and Ethan comes in and he gives everybody a character sheet, and we just get off roll 20, and we had this small, like, these level 1 adventurers are fighting some spiders, and it was like a continuation of the world after our characters had saved it. It was, I almost cried. I won't lie to you. It was.
I feel like this this little podcast we're doing is almost like give me the DM a hand job because everyone just keeps telling me how wonderful I am.
That's what this is. If you guys, you can't see what's.
You can't see how rock hard I am right now.
But it's what's happening. That's what's happening right now.
So things around a little bit.
Yep. So before we get too off subject, there, Brendan.
Yeah.
How did you feel about Rise of Tiamat?
It was definitely a great time, but I think what made it as enjoyable as it was the inclusion of all of our character stuff and all the homebrew to adjust and incorporate the module into the homebrew rather than just running the straight module. Because I know I had a lot of fun in Acathia, the hometown of the character I was playing, which was definitely not based on Demacia in any regards. I don't know what anyone's talking about. It was a fun town where they hate magic, so magic is outlawed, and so that's a fun issue to have to work around as a party with 2 magic users. And my character being kind of like a partial magic user. Yeah, with a celebrity appearance from one of our other friends.
Yeah, we had a guest star for that one. This was right
fun.
before Nerdy came in, before Matt Allen came in and joined us.
Which was still, it was really fun. But I mean, I think everyone kind of touched on a lot of the things that I feel about it. Like, it's a little railroady. It kind of sucks that all the masks are fake, and it's, yo, you got pranked, bro, 5 times. You didn't see it coming the 5th time. And it's all just do the fetch quest. There's nothing else. Do the fetch quest. You want to go do the fetch quest. Do the fetch quest, or die.
Yep.
Do the fetch quest.
Or die.
But there was a lot of fun stuff going on in it, and I do think that's a good springboard to mention that just because you buy a module and you're reading the book doesn't mean you have to run it exactly. You can just take it and slap it into a different world. Change the name of a city, change NPCs, do whatever you want. It's a good.
Yeah, it's supposed to be fun. It's a game.
Yeah, it's a game.
Exactly.
You don't have to read the book out to your players. You can just look at it and go, all right, I'll use that map, and then just be done with it. That's the book. There you go. You use the map.
I'm monk. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. But it was,
Yeah,
it was
Time monk.
Time monk.
Yep. For me, I guess Brendan, are you all set? Anything
Yeah,
else?
I mean, I can't say I like disliked anything per se. It was all a good time. There were definitely like lulls and haha, you didn't get the mask, teehee, sucks to be you. We outsmarted you with the fake. But get pranked, bro. Action Kutcher, what up? But there's
I'm fake. Put you on skates, boy.
But no, it was.
Yeah.
One more thing. The council meetings.
Oh my god,
those
the
were a lot of
sucked.
fun.
Yes, I was
made
gonna touch on the council.
yeah.
Yes.
It is.
I was like,
it is
it made,
so
I think it was a
infuriating
good
how well that
space.
was done.
It made a good space for role playing.
Yes.
Like that. A lot of just talking back and forth. Sometimes you're like, you walk into a conversation, and those kind of things, but you came for the sole purpose of we know, there's going to be some information dump here. There's going to be some talking back and forth. And so with that expectation coming for the sole reason, created a lot of cool opportunities for all of us, especially in the height of our wanting to kind of finish. We had a bulk build up of our characters. We knew who they were, these kind of things that we were able to come really fun conversations. It actually was some of my favorite debrief moments, within the campaign,
To add to that, I would like to say that I hate how accurate the council was portrayed, because it was a bunch of people being. It was literally just politics, and I hated it because everyone didn't want to agree on one thing, because I can't do that. That goes against what I feel. I don't care if it's for the good of everyone. It goes against what I want. And I hated it, but also it was very well done.
Other people's kids, man, I tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll touch on the council real quick too from the DM side. I hated the council. Not just I hated the council because they acted like a council. I hated the council because they suck to run. So basically how the Rise of Tiamat is structured is the whole first chapter is about this Waterdeep council, or maybe it's the second chapter. one of the two.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, here's all the members, their faction, why they're there, what they want, how you give it to them, what they don't like, who they don't like, and it's like 12 people on this council. And the book wants you to roleplay 12 different NPCs as wants and differences. And there's a little scorecard in the back, and based on what the party does in the adventure or doesn't do, you check the scorecard off, and that like gives points to certain council members to give you their aid. But the book never really gives you a good like grasp of like what you actually need to do to convince these people. So by the end of it, I'm just like, you convinced everyone, like you did what they asked you to do. And I just remember the first console session. I'm trying to do this console, like I think it's gonna be this great big role-play moment. And I think it was Eric is just like, can these guys just shut up so we can go do what we want to do?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to talk to these guys.
Which was very in character, in fairness.
They're just arguing amongst themselves. And as a DM, like one of the things I don't like DMing with is I don't like having multiple NPCs talk to each other. Because it sounds awkward. It's me trying to put on like 10 different voices and making you guys listen to like my schizophrenia talk to itself. And, I mean, that's what it feels like. So the Council of Waterdeep just was frustrating. And if you kind of noticed as we went on, you would just show up. They'd be like, this is what you did. This is who didn't like what. And this is what we need you to go do. And they ended there. So I'm glad the council was slightly better received than I felt, because I hated the council. I think if you had a good group of people that really like role-playing and engage the different members of the council
and the political
heavily,
intrigue stuff, and
it would really work. I feel like they were going for this heavy like Game of Thrones. Like there's a spot in the adventure where like the current head of the council gets ousted because he's doing a terrible job, and they put someone else in power, and which is cool because that comes into play in Waterdeep Dragon Heist, the fact that this guy gets kicked off the council. Again, love that these adventures are all chronologically tied to each other. Yeah, the council, in my opinion, big wet fart. So Rise of Tiamat, I loved Rise of Tiamat. For everything that the Rise of Tiamat book didn't do and all the stuff I put into it.
I was literally gonna say, like, if we include all of the homebrew stuff for this, it goes above Curse of Strahd for me by like a lot. But you take that out and it's like a C. If you take out the
I was gonna say like a C, maybe a B. It's alright. But we can move it in the tier in a moment.
Yeah,
get everyone's consensus.
All the stuff that got added and how everyone worked with me on the backstories, we were able to insert those. Like Brendan mentioned Acathia. I replaced one of the villages in the adventure with Acathia. We have this whole drawn out thing in Acathia there. And it's like 2 pages in the book, and it's like there's this town and this guy's evil and he's doing evil things and you need to stop and kill this green dragon and get this mask. And I'm like, boo.
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 Ooh.
So
if
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, looking at like the core of it, because really it's like I think Matt said it earlier. Feels like I'm talking third person. I'm gonna say cool, Matt. You know, it's a game. You got to make it fun, right? You got to add your own flavor to it. If we take into account all the stuff that, you know, not just you added in, but the group as a whole added in to the Rise of Tiamat, it's the best one we've played so far. But if you take all that out, it's
very, very bare bones. And I don't want to hark on it too much because I do enjoy what's there. I think it is even more so than Storm Kings. I think it has even more of an epic feel. It's like you're trying to stop the dragon god who's going to destroy the world. Like, yeah, the giants are causing problems,
the
but
classic JRPG trope. We're gonna kill God.
They're not taking over the world. I even made a joke. I'm like that. What do you think? I'm a JRPG villain and you have to defeat me or something? So I like that. I think the plot is cute. I think it's very bare bones. It requires a lot of DM elbow grease to really get that going. In terms of the encounters, I think Rise of Tiamat is a really easy campaign for the players until the final battle. Basically, Rise of Tiamat's solution to fighting is, I'm going to throw more challenge rating 1/8 cultists at you. So you're level 10, now you fight 12 cultists. You're level 15, now you fight 20 cultists. And
Fireball.
By the time you hit those levels and you're just like, fireball, and you annihilate like 10 of them in one turn, it's just like, okay.
Our kill
and there's no real
nutty.
consequences. That's the other thing about the game that with this particular module is just that you kill 20 cultists, you're just like, all right, we're moving on.
Yeah.
In reality, it's like you just killed 20 people that essentially had families, like other cultists that knew about them. They came from somewhere.
Right.
You know, so like there is no real gravitas to you, like why you're doing what you're doing. You just wiped out a town full of people, and you're just kind of like, oh, rock and roll.
Well, they're evil. Who cares?
They're bad. Cultists bad. You good. Kill. Even the dragons. Like by the time you fight your 5th dragon, like all the dragon fights are pretty similar. Yes, all the dragons have like different breath weapons, and they are like different. They kind of all mechanically function close enough to each other, at least how I ran them. So it's like, I have a green dragon, and he's got, like, poison breath, and the red dragon has fire breath and is more powerful than the green dragon. But they all fly, they all straight, they all get the same, like, breath weapon ability. So by the time you fight your, like, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th dragon, you're just like, cool.
Hey, it's a
Now
dragon.
I'm fighting an adult dragon instead of a young dragon. Woo. And it's, like, how I feel is if, Matt, you described Storm King's Thunder as cookie cutter, Storm King's Thunder is the gingerbread man cookie. Rise of Tiamat is the just circle cookie cutter cookie. Like, it's just a circle that you stick in there.
It is the chocolate chip cookie.
Yes, it is that cookie cutter. And it's still tasty. It's still a cookie.
It's a good
but
cookie.
You're not really getting a whole lot. So if everyone else is ready to tier this bad boy. Oh, one other thing. The book is structured horribly. You jump all over. It's worse than all the other books that I've looked at. It's no bueno. There's only one book I'm gonna rank worse than that, and we'll get to that in a second. But I say C tier. C tier from Ethan.
I would agree with that. C tier. I think
C.
I think the book
C-tier.
itself is a C tier.
Double S tier.
All right,
Oh,
new tier. Let's go.
I'm just kidding. No, I would say C as well.
Nick?
The big ol'
C.
C.
All right, it's unanimous. I was gonna say it doesn't really matter at that point because Nick, you get outvoted, but
Yeah, I think something that might be worth stating is it's probably written a little open, not really open, but like very dry, because it is meant to be done after Rise of the Dragon or Horde of the Dragon Queen. So you probably have something there from your party to incorporate, but as a standalone book, it's pretty rough.
Wait.
It's a win.
all right. Why don't we change things up here a little bit,
So
Brendan? Why don't you and I have a very quick discussion of Icewind Dale?
Okay.
Since I mentioned a book that I think is worse structured than Rise of Tiamat. So,
I have not read it, but I have very
apart
lightly participated.
Apart from this group, I bought the
Hello.
Icewind Dale Rise of the Frostmaiden book, and I ran it very shortly with another group. It kind of ended up falling apart just because of some life stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I have thoughts. I know Matt's presented here. I have thoughts.
I think this started
about Icewind
before
Dale.
you were here, and also ended before you got. Like, I think that's how short it was.
No, because I got the book in September, so Matt was.
Oh yeah, okay.
Was around when we were doing it, but it was a different group. Brendan was part of it. My wife was part of it. A couple other of our friends were part of it. I wanted to try running it. We were in the middle of the campaign. So yeah, Brendan, we'll be real quick here because I don't want to take too much time here. But go ahead and describe your thoughts about Icewind Dale and what little we played of it. Well, here, real quick before you do that, let me.
the recap.
So Icewind Dale takes you from 1 to I think it's 12 or 13, and basically the Icewind Dale, which is like in the far north. So Bryn Shander from Storm King's Thunder is like one of the big towns. There's 10 towns, and that area has entered an endless night. As a result of Oriel the Frostmaiden. She's cast a spell, and it's an endless wintry night there, and people are miserable. The towns are sacrificing people to try to get the endless winter to end, and your adventurers are there. And things happen to your adventurers while you are there, and eventually you try to find a way to stop the endless night. And that's the adventure story. And the reason I don't have more to say simply is there's like 8 ways you can do it, and none of them are very interesting, and they're all very disconnected. Brendan, share your opinions.
Okay, so I will say, as far as from the player perspective, definitely one of the more fun and interesting characters I've created. I had a lot of fun with him. He was really cool. He
also
died, which is very sad, and it was so unfortunate. I feel so bad that he died, because he was such a cool character with so much going on, and I will maybe play him in the future. I don't know. We'll see. I don't really know how I'd incorporate him into the current world that we're in, but maybe some other time I can bring him back. He was fun. He was a paladin. But it was just a lot of, like, not anything super crazy happened, which admittedly we only, I think, hit level 3. Like, we did not get very far. We were level 3 for, like, a session, and then it just all fell apart. But, I mean, it was okay. There was, like, some kind of a hook, but it was very slow burning, and we were having a hard time trying to figure out where to go or what to do. Like, we just had a couple of people be like, hey, my friend's over there, can you go find him? And we're like, sure, I guess.
Oh.
Also, there's this evil ice queen destroying the world. Well, the region. And they're like, oh, I guess we'll have to stop her at some point. Cool. Where was your friend again? We'll figure it out when we get there. It was weird. It was very slow. Not a lot happened. That's
your opinion there, Brendan? Yeah.
I died.
We didn't really make it off the first chapter, but I will describe my lovely little thoughts about Icewind Dale. Icewind Dale has a great adventure built in there. I don't know what Wizards of the Coast was trying to do, but I think it was too many cooks in the kitchen for this book. There's too much going on. So, how Icewind Dale is structured is the first chapter is about the 10 towns and all these side quests you can take in the 10 towns to bring you from level 1 to 5. Chapter 2, or maybe it's because chapter 1 is usually the introduction, so it might be chapter 3. But the next chapter focuses on the surrounding wilderness areas. And then you start getting into the meat and potatoes of the adventure itself. Icewind Dale has zero hook at all. There's no hook in the Icewind Dale. It's literally make a character and put them in Icewind Dale, and you are there, and you start in this town.
Yay.
Yeah, so there's no hook. Just the Frost Maiden's evil. I guess that's your hook, is that she's doing stuff.
She's evil, stop her.
I made a hook to bring the characters in. They were all outside from Icewind Dale. They get teleported into Icewind Dale. So when you start the adventure, you start in one of the 10 towns, and you begin to pick up these little side quests that have nothing to do with the overall adventure. So, as we were talking about Death House earlier from Curse of Strahd having nothing to do with Curse of Strahd, think about all the quests in the 10 towns with maybe one of them having to deal with actual what's going on in the Icewind Dale. So you're just wandering around collecting these quests, and it's kind of boring. And some of the quests are just brutally difficult. Like, depending on where your characters start. Well, first off, it gives you 2 starting quests that you can take. The first one's combat heavy, the other one's more roleplay heavy. But if you give them the combat heavy quest and they go find it immediate level 1, you probably won't TPK. One of your party members will die. The guy you fight is like ridiculously powerful for a level 1 party. One of your player characters will die. There's no question about it. Some of the 10 town quests, like if that's your starting location, you take it, you will die or TPK. It is brutal. I'd say it's more brutal than Strahd in terms of its difficulty, depending on where people get stuck. And it's boring. Like, as the DM, it's like, okay, cool, you're in this town and you get this dumb, stupid quest. This guy wants you to go find his cat in the woods, like, or something. Oh, you found wolves, kill the wolves. Ooh, spooky. There's a lot of, like, building tension in the story. Surrounding Oriel and, like, the 10 towns. Like I said, some of them are sacrificing people to her in hopes of getting her to stop the winter. But it never really affects the party. It's just what's happening. And the module wants to have this very oppressive, like, survival horror kind of feel. But it doesn't really click on all cylinders because your group really needs to want to play a survival heavy game. Like, you need to keep track of rations and travel time and elements and how, like, are people encumbered? Are they getting sick? And if you do that, it's scary. If you don't do that, it's very boring. You're just jumping from town to town, talking to different people. There also isn't really a great reason for your characters to do any of this. Like, you start in the 10 towns with nothing. You get this beginning quest that has nothing to do with really the Frost Maiden. It does a little bit, but it doesn't have a ton to do with her. You pick up these random quests, so you're basically just doing them for little to no pay. So you're just doing them. None of them further the quest. Then you can move out into the wilderness, but again, it's like aimless. You're just like out in the middle of nowhere. And then finally at about level like 7, you hit the main quest, where you find out that a bunch of Duergar, or these evil dwarves, held up in a fortress and they're trying to take Icewind Dale over, and they're using this Endless Night as a, like, reason for it. And they've built a mechanical dragon that attacks the 10 towns. So as the party, you can choose to fight the Duergar in their fortress or leave and go and stop the dragon. If you fight the Duergar, the dragon destroys almost all the 10 towns and kills like a ton of people. If you don't stop the Duergar dragon, which is ridiculously hard, you can save the 10 towns, but then the Duergar have enough of a force to then attack the 10 towns, essentially. So it's like this huge lose-lose situation. And it's weird how it works out. And timetables don't make sense or map up. And the information you can get to defeat the dragon, the mechanical dragon, you have to get from the fortress that if you go into, the 10 towns will be destroyed by the dragon. So, just doesn't make a lot of sense.
If you want a better adventure in the Icewind Dale in the 10 towns, read the Drizzt Do'Urden books. Because that takes place in that area and is actually pretty cool. He's a fun character. Who in the new D&D game is like 99% sure voiced by Matt Mercer, who's a cool guy.
Oh. What else? After that, you end up finding out that there's like a group of Arcane Brotherhood wizards who are trying to find this hidden necropolis that they can use to end the Endless Winter. And all while this is going on, Ariel is still doing this thing. So eventually you have to go to her island to get an item to find this necropolis. But if you beat Ariel, kill the bird she flies on, it ends the Endless Winter because she's gone and the bird dies that she has to ride to cast this spell. So you can end it there. You can end it by doing the necropolis. And it feels like there's like 9 stories going on at one time and none of them are really connected that well. It's like, what do I want to run? And I feel like when they wrote this adventure, they were inspired by like The Thing, like this hopeless bleakness. They were inspired by horror movies that are like The Shining and these kind of like dark, hopeless feeling things. But it never really meshes well with each other. And I got bored really quick. Our party just kind of fell apart because of life stuff, so we just sort of ended it. I hate to say this, I would rank this as my F tier. And I hate to say it, I was really looking for it. I love horror. I love The Thing. I was hoping this was going to be another Curse of Strahd. I was hoping Ariel was going to be this great villain that was going to have this like presence throughout the Icewind Dale, and you were going to be dealing with her. She's just like background dressing almost, and you can actually not deal with her depending on how the adventure goes. You can stop everything other ways.
It's not a good villain. That's never a good. If you can get through the entire campaign and not have to deal with them, not a good.
Not a good villain. And I hate to say it, if you didn't want her to be a big villain, don't put Icewind Dale Rime of the Frost Maiden as your title, because I immediately associate that with Frost Maiden is the focus of the adventure. This is the big evil thing, like Curse of Strahd, Rise of Tiamat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Rime
Superman
of the Frost
4,
Maiden.
The Quest for Peace.
4.
I see.
So yeah, I would throw Icewind Dale in F tier. Brennan, I don't know how you feel.
I don't have. I think just because we didn't get very far in it, I don't think I have enough of an opinion on it to be able to really accurately rank it anywhere. So it will stay in F tier because the only opinion on it is F tier. But one that we can all talk about, the starter set.
Yes.
Lost Minds of Phandelver, run by this boy. Oh, there we go. This boy right here.
Matt Swift ran this one.
Yeah.
He was our DM. He took over for me.
I had one of the weirdest characters I've ever played, but also very fun to play.
We all had
the worst party
weird
ever.
And quirky characters.
Everyone had something weird about them, and none of us knew how to talk to people.
I was a foul mouth.
I loved it.
It was such a great time.
Ethan played it like a 12-year-old little girl.
I told someone I would skull fuck the shit out of them as a 12-year-old.
Quite literally, the highest charisma score in our party was a 12-year-old girl with a 14.
I had to be the face of the party.
Our face was a 12-year-old. We had like 30-year-old dudes walking around with a 12-year-old girl, and she was the face because she had the best ability to talk to people.
Yeah, it's put in perspective. It's called the starter set. It's like we talked about cookie cutter campaigns before.
Oh, this is the most cookie cutter out there.
And it was my first time DMing, so I was totally okay with that.
Oh, yeah.
But
was a good time.
the group we had, I had to think on my toes a lot for how the parties interacted with pretty much every part along the way. It was great.
Yes,
It was such a fun time.
I love
Here's
this.
a quick rundown for it. So it's levels 1 to 5. You can get it in the starter set, which is awesome because you get some dice, you get some pre-made character sheets. It's a really good deal.
DM
for like $20.
screen, get some character sheets. I think
it's a good
with
deal
it.
for
Get a
$20.
lot of stuff out of it.
It's pretty good. And basically, you're a party of adventurers who are taking a wagon full of like mining equipment to the town of Phandalin, based on the like this dwarf hires you. What is his name? Gundren or something?
Yeah,
Gundren.
And basically, you get attacked by some goblins. You find out that the brothers have been abducted by a like black market kind of guy by the name of the Black Spider. Phandalin is dealing with a horrible like mercenary group named the Red Bands, who are just treating everyone like garbage. And you have to find the Wave Echo Cave, which is like this like super hidden forge is in this mine essentially. And yeah, the party basically goes through. It's got some good role-playing spots in it. It's got some good combat in it. But Matt, you ran it, so why don't you start us on this one?
Yeah. So, like I said before, it's about as cookie cutter as you can get. It holds your hand the entire way, as expected. It being from the starter set.
That's not a bad thing for
Yeah.
what it is. That's
think-
what it should be.
Yeah, and you know, there's we talked about this with Storm Kings. Is like there's definitive good and evil. You know, there's never like really any moral gray areas. I mean, we created some moral gray areas, but that's because of the party we had. But
That's
that was
because
all
we
in
were a
good fun.
bunch of idiots.
But I think the one thing that it did really well is it very easily could have been like go to point A, then point B, then point C, then point D, end. The beginning of it, you have no choice. You end up going to the Cragmaw hideout and all that, and then you end up going to town. But when you're in town, there's a lot of things that you can do that change your adventure moving forward. Depending on the people that you talk to, you can learn things about different locations or people to reach out to for more information. And a couple of the encounters just totally change based on who you talk to. So one instance that I'm thinking of is the town of Thunder Tree, where they had like a whole bunch of those like twig blights, and there was a whole bunch of zombies, and it's where the angsty teen green dragon that you guys are just like, hey, you're stupid, don't stop rebelling against your parents or whatever. The way that you enter that,
stop listening to that metal music.
but the way that
outside.
you enter that and the direction that you go when you get there is totally dictated based on what information you guys gather before you get there. You could not know that the druid guy was there to help take you to where the Wave Echo Cave was, or you could be going onto complete opposite side of town where you get spotted by the cultists immediately that were camping out there, or you get surrounded by zombies. So it was cool because it was just like those small things that like it's not going to derail your campaign in any direction, but it kind of like gets you off the beaten path a little bit so they can bring you back in. And I thought it was a really cool way to introduce that kind of concept to newbies, and I had a good time running it. Yeah, I overall liked it. Again, very cookie cutter, but first time DM, and I thought it was a great one to run.
Matt, why don't you go ahead and go? We'll go Matt.
Matt.
Yeah,
Double
I
Max.
liked it. I had a lot of fun. I think that yes, the party dynamic was very different than
fun.
anything that had been before.
Yes. It
A
was
very
fun time.
antisocial party, which I think is really, would probably be a very difficult group for a DM any experience level. To Matt did it very well, especially for the first time.
Oh,
So, no, I had a lot
Hand
of
job
fun. Yes, as we've moved in, I had a lot of fun. I think that I would like to see that expanded a little bit more. The concept of the spell forge is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
So
Cool idea.
I think there could be more to that, you know. So it'd be cool to see that. I think our epilogues for that game were more interesting than the game itself.
Yeah.
That's
Because we just
true.
got
That is
so
very
invested
true.
in our weird ass characters. That I think,
No, I'd have
more
to
than we had any reason to be.
Our characters were so janky. It was so fun.
Our characters
So
were
really
funny
cool.
too, because I feel like by the time we were done with Lost Minds, we were like all done with our characters. Like we were like, We have taken these bonker ass.
We've taken them as far as we can.
To their furthest extent.
Yeah,
There's
and we
nothing else we can
pressured
do.
him into making us higher level than we should have been, and we learned no lessons.
Yeah,
we had no hubris.
The adventure goes from 1 to 5. Do not, if you are a DM, do not let your party into the Wave Echo Cave at level 5 because they will just try.
They're supposed to hit 5
We like
when they
one
beat
shot
it.
the main villain.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, it's like, oh, it's just one level, but, like, the amount of crap you get from level 4
Yeah,
to
level
5.
5 is like, that is the big level.
Yeah.
We stopped listening to them, and we were like, we are the biggest fish. There is no bigger fish. We've learned no lesson.
But, yeah.
I don't think we've ever split the party that much either.
Oh my god, that whole adventure was split.
We did nothing but split the party the whole adventure, and we learned no lessons the entire. Everyone just kept doing their thing.
Wandered the entire cave by himself because we left him, and he's like, I don't know where they went, so I'm gonna go this way.
And my character would not seek to find them urgently.
The party dynamic was like almost like comedic relief after like because the party dynamic was freaking hilarious. And honestly, it was like a short campaign. I don't think we played it for 3 months. I think it was
like 2.5 roughly.
It was like 2.
I think it was a good like.
Because you started it in January and we picked up Alicia in May, so no, it was about 4 months actually.
Okay, yeah.
I think there were a few breaks in there, I think, where he couldn't run it, and we did a different thing.
Oh, true.
That's true. That's true.
So it's probably close.
So like 2.5, 3 months sounds about right for how long he was running.
Which for a starter set, that's $20, where you get dice and a screen and all the good stuff in there. That much game is, I mean, that's a deal.
Like 3 months worth of content there. That's
going off of what you said, Matt, about wanting it expanded upon. I know the Essentials kit, which is the kit they came out with afterwards. That goes from 1 to 7, but that's also set in Phandelver, and a lot of people I know buy both, and they will blend both adventures because they can be ran concurrently with each other. Not sure if any of those go more in detail on the Spellforge, but if you want more info on that area or more to do in that area, you could really expand that game to probably a half-a-year campaign if you combine both of them.
Oh yeah.
But if not, there's probably things on Reddit or online, or like people have written modules to extend afterwards as well. Maybe do a little bit of digging on the internet. That is a cool concept.
Nick, what was your thoughts?
Kevin.
Yeah, it was fun. I had a good time. Once we got into town, the town was fun. It was a neat, little, small little town. I mean, we had been really, all of our campaigns have been, traveling a whole coast, going through from town to town to town. This one was a nice, you didn't have to worry about all of these or all to go. It very much was you're a group that walks into this one town, and you can choose to, try to figure out as much as the few problems in town, what they are, or you can go and, involve the main quest. And so I think we had a lot of good time, even just joking around in town. Out of any town, I think we got to enjoy, lots of different characters. We got to spend, going back to the same tavern, over and over again, and having some jokes with, the barkeep, or the little farm on the south end of town. We just messed with their pigs. I felt so bad for that.
I did too.
They were
we did her dirty.
Whatever.
The guardian pig.
Champion pigs. In the epilogue, they have parades now for those pigs.
They were a huge deal. I agree with you, Nick. I agree with you, Nick. Though, of all the adventures, because you spend so much time in that town, you actually really get to know the NPCs and the shopkeepers, which in none of the other adventures, because they're constantly traveling and moving around, you don't get that quite as much. Maybe you get a little bit of it in Curse of Strahd because you're in the areas a little longer, but because of how oppressive Curse of Strahd is, you can't stay anywhere for too long. Just shit hits the fan and you have to leave. Mm-hmm. So Phandelver really gives you that or Phandalin, excuse me, gives you kind of that chance to slow down and ease into it.
Smell the manure.
Yeah, and you can have But you can like have like running jokes, like there's not a lot of space, in some of those larger campaigns for like, your character keep going back to the tavern to try to fool him into, getting drink, or, there's not a lot of time where you can kind of build a relationship with one character, other than ones that travel with you, in the other campaigns that we had with, Melody or,
or Curse of Strahd with Irina and...
So, right. That just doesn't happen all that often. And so for a small campaign, for a little tiny thing, that it definitely is they do a good job of building that town up a little bit with things to do.
Yeah, if I could go back in time, because how I feel about it is I really enjoyed Lost Mines too. I think it's a good little starter adventure. If I go back in time, I'd almost have made it the first thing we ran as a group, because one, I think it would have been an easy way to introduce everyone into D&D like fast. But kind of when we started it was both good and bad for me, because it was like a nice one. It was my break from DMing, so I was a player. It felt like a break from like the heaviness of like Curse of Strahd and Rise of Tiamat and Storm Kings, were these like world-ending plot. Lost Mines, like if Gundred never got his spell forged, like no one was really gonna have a problem. Like the world wasn't gonna end, society wasn't gonna break down and become nothing. So it was nice in that regard, but at the same time, it did feel a little like, because there wasn't that like driver push to like there's this big apocalyptic thing that you need to stop. And I think for low level adventures that's okay though. But like I said, for me it was both like a good and a bad thing.
Yeah, so like you said, if you could supplement it with something too, so like if it was something that was going on while a much larger plot was simultaneously developing, I think it would fit in really, really well.
Or even if you like linked it with another adventure book, like, you do Lost Mines and then start the other adventure book and start feeding the seeds of the adventure into Lost Mines. So they start popping up like Storm King's Thunder, maybe. Oh, there's talks of like hill giants coming out of the hills more often and bothering people. Like, what's up with that? And then, you start up Storm King's Thunder, you run off to Golden Field where the hill giants attack, and that's like when the shit hits the fan moment. Oh my god, the hill giants are attacking this town. What do we do? That might help. But... Brandon, how about you?
Yeah. So I mean, it was very fun. I mean, it was just a fun character, fun cast of characters, bunch of jokesters. I mean, the plot was, I think everything we all expected to happen happened. Nothing came out of left field. It was like, yeah, that's gonna happen. Oh wow, yeah, it happened. Okay, cool. But for especially for like a first time DMing thing, definitely not a bad thing to have something be kind of predictable and easy to do and understand. But man, eating goblin fingers and cutting up random things because I'm a lizard and just don't care. Great time. Some of the most fun character moments I think that we've had.
It is what you make it.
Stupidity.
It truly is what you make it. And if it's a first time D&D group, it might have been worse. Now that I'm saying, I wish I would have ran this first. When you guys had like no character arc for your first characters, and it was like, I'm a barbarian, I'm a paladin. Lost Mines might have been really boring, like, because you wouldn't have done anything special with it.
It would have been like the most generic thing.
Like the best parts about Lost Mines for me was all of the dumb stuff our characters did. Like my child character tried to steal booze from the bartender so she could try it, or Brendan's character eating fingers, or Matt's character who was basically like, he basically was like the autism gnome almost.
Asperger's.
Yeah, Asperger's gnome, and he built himself this like robotic suit because he was an artificial.
He became Tony Stark.
Yeah, and then getting into combat, am I very dry, doesn't understand metaphors at all, just kind of great man lizard, just becomes Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage and just starts suplexing things and shouting brother.
Or Nick's character being a gnome on stilts and told everyone he was a human, so for like half the thing we all thought he was human. And then Nick came over to our apartment at like just randomly because his work's over by here, and so we decided to play together. And we're like, we should come up with this cool idea since we are here. So we body swapped our characters, and that's how we revealed he was a gnome.
They
named
Orb or
Kevin.
Freaky Friday. Yeah.
I was basically blindsided by that too, which was awesome.
That was the
Yeah, we
biggest
didn't call
twist.
that. We
Was that
did
our
it.
gnome was actually, or that our human wizard was actually a gnome on stilts named Kevin.
that.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, Zoltar was your name you gave us, but
Zoltar.
your real name was Kevin.
There was
Kevin,
actually some
yeah.
cool moments early on too with the Gothic that we
Yeah,
fought, because you have to make the saving throw, and he tells like a secret if you fail it. So we got to hear him say Kevin to Zoltar, but our characters are too stupid to understand what that means. We're like, his name's not Kevin, he's Zoltar. That's not Kevin.
Yeah, what's wrong with you, random monster?
Yeah, what's wrong? That's not his name.
What do
You're
you know?
confused.
I just want to read
Go back under your bridge.
the first line of what Nick sent me for that character, because it kills me to this day. Kevin Dogood is a traveling salesman peddling his magical knickknacks, doodads, goods, and wares, posing as a great and powerful wizard, Zoltar. The problem is, Kevin is not great, not powerful, and his name is not Zoltar. It's Kevin. I read that when before we started. It killed
So
me.
good.
He had some great magical items too. Like Nick just came up with all these useless items. He gave me a fork that made everything I eat with it taste like chicken.
Yep.
Just some dumb
Oh, it was
items that are
great.
never. It was great. I feel like I used that
Yep.
fork for something actually useful though at some point. Maybe not
Maybe.
though.
I don't
Possibly.
remember.
So yeah, do we want to tier this one up?
Yeah.
I
What?
give it an A personally.
My
I
initial
think-
thoughts are like a B or a C just for the adventure itself, but
Yeah, I was
our run
thinking-
through of it was definitely an A. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you throw in the party dynamic. I think that's what honestly set it up to be really, really fun. But if we look at face value, I think there's something to be said about how much you get for it being like a $20 me and a few friends want to try D&D kind of thing. So for that, I'd probably put it somewhere between Storm Kings and Rise of Tiamat. Either B but lower than Storm King, or C higher than Rise of Tiamat.
I'd be game for higher than Tiamat but lower than Storm Kings and B. I'm actually good with that.
I think it's just it's a solid B, and if you've never played before, I would say it's close to a B plus.
Yeah.
It'll get you where you need to go for
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons without being too complicated.
And it also leaves everything really well. You can basically, I think, jump into every source book, more or less. I mean, some of them start at 3, but I know, Storm King's Thunder... Well, Storm King's Thunder starts at 5, but you go right into Storm Kings from Lost Minds. You're great. I think Curse of Strahd has a thing in there where it's oh, if you started in Lost Minds of Phandelver, here's a way that you can, introduce the party, and it gives you a couple things to, build with, to, make the game a little tougher, or you can skip this section or kind of brush over this stuff because they don't need to worry about this anymore.
One thing I wanted to point out, because you were talking about the readability of all these things. I actually bought this. I didn't buy the book for it. I bought the module on Roll20, and the way that it is set up, the readability is insanely good. Not only is the plot told chronologically because it's so cookie cutter, but everything within the plot is hyperlinked. So if an NPC is named, you click their name and then a box pops up and says it has the stat block for that NPC, what their motives are, what their likes and dislikes are, how to roleplay them, and then what part, what subquest they're even part of. So I'd have to give it a perfect 10 out of 10 on picking it up as complete newbie DM and just being able to actually flow through it.
Yeah, that's great.
I consider readability of these modules to be a huge make or break point on these things, because like I said, you got a book like Icewind Dale and it's confusing, and Icewind Dale's layout's it's not great, but it's not awful. I as much as I love Curse of Strahd, if I knocked it for anything, it would be the layout of the book. I had hoped when they did revamp, they were going to relay that book out to do things, because you should do the Village of Barovia chapter, the Valleki chapter, the Krezk chapter, and kind of spread these things out based on the levels of where they need to go, and not just be level 11, chapter 11 is the Yesterhill, that you can go to at any point.
I guess thinking about it, thinking back to the book, it does kind of make sense that Castle Barovia is where it is, because one of the first things you do in Barovia once you leave the village is there's this dark carriage that'll take you into Castle Ravenloft to have dinner with Strahd, so he can set up him being a villain a lot harder.
That is
And
true.
nobody ever does it because nobody wants to get in the carriage. Because that's scary and you don't know where it's going.
You're gonna have a bad time. All right, so we got Lost Mines.
Firmly planted in B Understorm King.
Cool. So the next one, let's talk about Tales of the Yawning Portal, which we haven't technically played everything in there. But for the Elite campaign, I did run a homebrewed version of the very first adventure in there, the Sunless Citadel, which is actually a revamp of a third edition D&D adventure called the Sunless Citadel. Might be a little difficult to take the book at face value because I made it significantly harder than it is in the book. But I'd still be interested to know everyone's thoughts and where we might rank that. So Nick, why don't we start with you? Because I don't think we start with you. We'll start with Matt Allen on this one because he has not started one off for us.
Okay, yeah. I think that the top of this little thing that we did, I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting. One of the things I would say is that like you have to have the right party and right players to get that hook in, because you could just as easily just like ignore it and go about your business, and it's not like a real big like do this thing, like this thing's super important. I had a lot of fun though. I think our characters are really interesting. Again, we've kind of like hit our stride with these particular characters with like the amount of backstory and like different way our characters interact with each other, different motivations and stuff like that. We're still getting to know each other as far as characters are, but I think it's a lot of fun to watch. And I'm personally having a lot of fun with playing my character, so I'm having a really good time doing it all together. And it's been interesting to try to fight without fighting. And that's kind of like been my thing, so it's been really fun.
Yeah, very interesting. I think one of the cool things that I did with Fredrickson is when he had that whole wild magic incident and actually killed a whole bunch of people that he didn't mean to. I went through Death House with 100% refusing to use magic.
Yep.
So it's kind of like the fighting without fighting, but being a sorcerer without being a sorcerer thing. It presents a very unique challenge, for sure. So definitely props on that.
Very unique ways to go about it. How'd you feel about the overall dungeon, Matt?
I thought it was like, well, you got a whole lot of hobbling. A whole lot of hobbling.
Yep.
We killed 26 in the whole dungeon.
What I will say is, as for a homebrew, the actual first hobblings you meet, the deep hobblings, are actually kobolds in the original adventure. So it's kobolds versus goblins in that citadel.
That would make more sense. But then, I would say that like, it was one of the first things with traps that like actually seemed to like matter. And I do enjoy me some traps and some puzzles. And I like that the puzzle, like, again, like I'm a big language guy, I'm a big lore character when I'm writing campaigns or when I'm like involved in them. So I liked how it was like, like if you don't know Draconic, you're not going to know what this is. And it provides a reason for someone to need to know a language. And I think that's a big bit that makes the world seem bigger. And I liked the traps. Even though there weren't like a whole bunch of like weird ones, there were just enough that it was just like we were like cautious when we would enter a room. And I think that's how a dungeon should be.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do Nick. Nick, you tell us how what you feel about
going off those. Those traps, like, it is so funny. I'm a person who like just wants to press all the buttons just to see what they do. You just want to know. But it's like, cause like we're in this dungeon, you're like, you want to 100% complete it if you got a chance, like you want to see all that it has. Like, traps are interesting, they do interesting things rather than, like this neat statue that's doing this interesting thing. Like like let's just walk by it because I'm a little bit afraid of it. And usually like that's more boring than it is to like actually see what the trap does. And so, but you have to like, there's negative consequences to pressing those buttons a lot of times. And so you're like, I can't press too many buttons by myself, or else, I might not have this character anymore. and just being reckless. So I like those dungeons. They're a lot of fun to do those kind of things, and that they're not all punishing. Like to do something like Tomb of Horror, whatever, where it's just like all of those buttons.
Technically, for Matt Allen would have been part of this, but we ran half of Tomb of Horror as like a just one shot one time from that comes from Tales of the Yawning Portal as well, and I'll touch upon that a little bit when I get to my stuff. But
yeah, and so to have those kind of dungeons, more classic dungeons that have those like pit traps and all those kind of things, it makes you play the game differently, because it is sometimes when you don't have where you have to like talk in a specific language and you don't have some of those puzzles. There are lots of stats and things like that that we haven't ever touched in a year and a half of playing, just because like they're just not common things that we. So it is fun to have some of those dungeons every once in a while, give you a different challenge that maybe someone has a skill in that, just because of how they've built their character, but you never get to use it. And so it's fun to that, in other ways they wouldn't be useful. Maybe, because Matt's character fighting all that much, he's kind of hanging out in the back, like a little help here and there, that he gets a chance to do some sort of mechanic-wise in the game, something's requiring of him to do that. And it's fun to see those different aspects. And that can help in role-playing, too, is like you get, an aspect for that character to do something and give you a chance to kind of give some more fleshed out, things that they can do and that people know about them. So I appreciate that, and, in a little dungeon that's, pretty early on in our campaign.
What's so funny is both you guys mentioned the traps, and we ran Storm King, Strata, and Rise of Tiamat, and there's a ton of dungeons in those games, and I can't really remember too many of them that were overly trap heavy. Like there might have been one or two, but they were easy to miss or just like avoid completely. And you guys are right, this does feel like the first dungeon we've ran where the traps were there and workable and did stuff against the party and could hurt them, which I don't know if that's just because it's an older edition dungeon they've revamped for 5th and third was more trap heavy, or if they just aren't focusing as much on traps. But it is an interesting point.
Yeah, I think we feel the impact of it too, being so low leveled. I know when we were, because I think about how like Storm King started, a lot of like the opening areas were like very wide open. Like, I mean, you start off at like Nightstone. It's just a town, so there's not like a town that's gonna have traps in it. So if you're gonna be falling down a pit and take 2d6 of damage when you're level 1, that's a substantial amount of damage compared to.
That is potentially your character dies damage.
You could potentially die off that compared to other dungeon calls where we didn't really start diving into like deeper dungeons until like level 5, 6, 7. And you have a HP pool there, you have higher decks, you get the ability to score modifiers. So I definitely like the feeling of the traps in this one.
Because it gives some character to the dungeon. Like I think of Strahd, like even some of the traps that were in there, like you teleport to like a cell that you had to like break out or whatever. But there wasn't really like a negative consequence. It just like, you get placed over here, and maybe you have to fight through some extra enemies on your own. Split, like a force split of the party, which makes it, an interesting problem to solve. But at least in here, it's a very obvious trap. You walk in, statue of a dragon's eyes are like you're confronted with the problem that you have, whether or not it or one way or another, and that gives some, a lot of times you just get flavor over a room. You open it up and there's trash on the ground. Maybe a few books, so maybe you look at the book and see if it's like worth anything or useful. At least that gives you some way to interact with, other than just doing like a dice roll or.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you 100% there. The other trap that I guess I should say Ravenloft was probably the next biggest trap heavy dungeon. There's that elevator trap that I think Thok and Fredrickson got caught in,
Yep.
where it goes and will like gas you or whatever. But you guys got out of that one without too much trouble. You figured it out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm thinking of there was a puzzle in one of the campaigns we ran where it was like to enter. I think it was in Strahd.
Yeah, it was Curse of
Strahd.
Strahd.
The tower where you do like the hand dances or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
Thok
just, like,
figured it out.
so we solved it like in 2 seconds, but it was just like it stuck out to me because it was so funny. Because I just picture Thok basically doing yoga to get into this tower.
Yeah, that was pretty humorous.
But some of those puzzles, it's fun because you're like, you think about it for a second, but then when you get it in it, you're like, I'm going to do these things. Like my character puts his arm up, and then it does something, and something lights up or whatever. Like it's that aha moment that you kind of get in, like, oh, I did something. A little bit of that like kind of achievement, adrenaline that you get, and it kind of it breaks up the dungeon a little bit rather than just going finding out, oh, here's a bunch of enemies, and just gives a little bit of a twist.
Something else to think about and worry about. Not just what you're gonna hit. Brennan, how do you feel about it? You're the one who hasn't really said much.
That is true. I know so far with this campaign, I've had a lot of fun trying to figure out how to turn spells into something gambling related. Because that is such a weird and oddly specific flavor to have. And it's been a lot of fun doing that and having a fun time in the dungeons, being able to use things like Fairy Fire in big areas and have decent impact with it, and not really being able to use Arms of Hadar, but that's okay. It's just too dangerous because I'm always in the back and there's always someone with me, like Darian or Arthur shooting his gun or something. So I don't want to endanger and hit them yet. But the dungeon itself was it was tough, but it was
my biggest
definitely made us think differently.
Yeah, my biggest thing is I don't know what's the source material and what's homebrew, but I mean I'm having a blast with Alicia.
Well, I can kind of clear some of that up. So the layout in the dungeon and all the traps are the same. I didn't change any of that. Where I changed things was the number of enemies you're fighting. So in the technically, when you start the dungeon, you're supposed to be level 1, and then when you make it downstairs, you turn level 2. Well, I leveled you up to level 2 quicker because level 1, you're so squishy that, I could breathe on you.
One of those pitfalls could literally kill a wizard.
Exactly. So I brought you up to level 2, but that also meant I wanted to make the encounters a little hard. I may have overdone it a little bit, but you guys still did it, and you still won it, and it made for a very memorable encounter. I think in that big room where all the hoblings were, they're goblins. I think there's like 6 in there, and I put 14 in there because there's other goblins in there, but they are like non-combat goblins. Like they won't fight you. So I turned most of them into fightable goblins, and and then you guys got the dragons, the direwolves. I'm like, well, I want this to be somewhat memorable, so I started adding a couple more. I'm like, well, let's increase a little bit. I may have overdone it just a wee bit.
I think it was good though.
Killed multiple direwolves, almost killed like 3 people throughout the entire dungeon. I'd call it a well-balanced encounter. Admittedly, Arthur was close, 2 of those 3.
Basically all of downstairs from what you got. Matt's like, I hated it. It was the worst.
I say nay.
Nay.
I say nay.
I mean, I know my main philosophy for balance is important encounters should at the very least down somebody. Not necessarily kill, but just at least down. Unless it's like the big bad, then that should be TPK City if you're trying to, not like guarantee TPK, but like the potential should be there, which is a very difficult act to balance because it should still be fair. But
in terms of the downstairs area, that was almost completely run straight. Like
right there.
Even the final battle with Balik, I didn't change really anything for that. They all had the same spells. It was the same general amount of enemies that can enter the battle. So that was pretty much as is. And I thought that encounter went decent enough.
Yeah, no, I mean, I almost got taken down by I don't know if
Magic
she's a
missile.
The single magic missile spell.
I'm so happy you didn't have all 3 hit me, because I'm pretty sure I would have went down like instantly. But
I was
yeah, no,
tempted.
it was. I could see it in your eyes. But no, I thought it was pretty solid.
Good. And then the other adventure we ran out of there was Death House, which we ran half
Tomb of Horrors.
Death House. Tomb of Horrors. Thank you. Why did I say? We ran half of Tomb of Horrors, which for those that don't know, Tomb of Horrors is a reprint of probably D&D's most infamous dungeon from first edition, the Tomb of Horrors, which was literally created to just murder party members. Yep. Very interesting stories behind it. Look it up. Tomb of Horror in 5th edition, though, is not the Tomb of Horror of 1st edition. If you get poisoned, and it's just like disadvantage for however long the poison lasts. If you get poisoned in 1st edition, you just die immediately. There's no saves. You just are out. You're done. And like everything in the Tomb of Horror poisons you. So in 5th edition, it's like, oh, I fell into a spike pit. I take some poison damage, and I'm poisoned for 8 hours. In 1st edition Tomb of Horror, I fell into the spike pit, and I immediately die. No save. I just fell in. I'm dead. You're gone. Goodbye. New character. So, you know, how I personally feel about it is, and we can get other opinions in a second, is Tomb of Horror has this, like, build up. Like, if you play D&D and you're into D&D, you know Tomb of Horror is the big, nasty, horrible dungeon that is infamous, and it's so hard, and it's going to tax you, and you're going to lose 10 characters going through Tomb of Horror. You guys made it halfway through Tomb of Horror, and no one had died. And I think for a couple reasons. One, 5th edition's Tomb of Horror is not nearly as deadly as 1st edition Tomb of Horror is. If you guys had done 1st edition Tomb of Horror, Brendan would have died because he fell into one of the spike pits, like twice.
I was not the only one that fell into a spike pit.
Yeah, a couple people fell in, so you'd all died. But the other thing I think is when you go to your players and you say, hey, we're going to run the Tomb of Horror, because you want to prepare them, you're running Tomb of Horror. Their first instinct is I am going into a dungeon that is going to kill me and is going to be full of things that seem one way but are not that way, which makes it very easy for people to start taking options that are the most illogical. Like, there's a door painted on the wall. I'm going to go push it in. That's the way I need to go. Where if you went down the hallway and you went through the door, it would just beam you out of the dungeon. And that's like the FU, the beginning FU like trap. And then you have to relocate it essentially. But because everyone's so hyper aware that they are in the Tomb of Horror, that they will die, that there's all this awful stuff, everyone's very like, well, what about this? How do we do this? You know, watch out for that. Don't look in there. You know, things that seem like they might hurt you, you avoid because you assume that they are going to hurt you in the Tomb of Horror.
It's like unintentional metagaming it. Like, even if you're not familiar with Tomb of Horrors, which I wasn't at all, we're sitting there like overthinking every single move we make.
It is really the metagaming dungeon. It is a dungeon.
It is designed for it. It was meant to be metagamed. It was designed to kill overconfident characters, not players.
Yeah, it is designed to task the player, not their character.
Yes.
To task your mental game as a person playing a board game, essentially, not what your character will go up against. And I would have been interested if we would have continued to see, like, how far you guys would have made it in there and, like, if some of the other traps would have got you. But, like, at the start of the dungeon, there's, like, this, like, goat skull mouth thing with a huge open mouth. And if you, like, look in there and go too far in, there's like a spell of like destruction in there, and it just immediately destroys. It immediately kills you. It basically like makes it so you whatever touches it no longer exists, and you die.
There's a lot of just you die in that dungeon.
Yeah, but no one bothered to go down there because everyone was like,
I don't think we went that far. Yeah,
don't go over there. Don't look in that. Let's push this door open. That's the way we need to go. That kind of stuff. So
also a lot of you teleport to the start of the dungeon completely naked, and all your stuff's gone.
Yeah, all your stuff's gone.
There's really
there's one thing that changes your alignment and your gender if you go into it. So if you hop in, you could go from like good to evil. If you go into it again, you could go from male to female or female to male. And then if you go into it again, it teleports you out of the dungeon with none of your stuff completely naked. It's just a huge middle finger kind of thing. There's like no way to reverse it. But again,
that's why you're just a changeling, and you just laugh and laugh and laugh.
Again,
this is just who I am.
that door was there, and you guys could have entered, and everyone was like, "We're not going in there because we know it's gonna be bad. Let's push every stone on the wall until we find a hidden door. Look, we found one. This is the fucking Tomb of Horror, and of course there is."
The hidden door, it's right there.
Everything's a hidden door.
I mean, reading the module, like, as the DM, I'm like, holy crap, like, this is deadly as hell. And then watching you guys play it, I'm like, this isn't that actually awful. I mean, if you're a real idiot and you're just like, I'm gonna stick my head into everything, then you might die, but...
Just come prepared with, like, 50 characters.
Yeah.
I know, I just dislike it out of principle. I'm not a big fan of the... I'm going to say, screw you, you're being too much of a dick. I don't like it. How dare you think you're powerful? You want to be powerful? Step into this little orb thing. That'll kill you immediately. No saving throw. You're just dead. Sucks to suck, nerd. How dare you walk in there?
Guys.
I'm not a fan of that kind of design philosophy. And I get that it was done intentionally
I feel like
to say screw to those kinds of people, but...
Any D&D player should play through the Tomb of Horror once just to do it, because it is such a classic dungeon. But you don't need to play through it again. There's no reason to after that. Because even, I know, like, you know, if I play Curse of Strahd and DM'd it, and Brendan ran it, me, no thing about Curse of Strahd that my character doesn't. I would have to play my character like, I don't know that, you know, this is going to happen in Valekia, or this is going to happen in
These hags are cooking children.
Yeah,
I don't know that.
Here. I don't know that. In Tomb of Horror, you can't do that. You can't say, oh, I'm playing this a second, third, or fourth time. My character doesn't know this and is going to stick their head into the portal of death at the start of the dungeon. You know, because you know, as the player, it's designed to mess with you. So it's just a weird thing. Mm-hmm. I feel like it was added...
That's when you meta game the meta game, and you just create a character who longs for death.
Yes.
But can't achieve it. Like my character, I had like, oh, bring more character sheets. Nope, I have one character. My character is Steve the Undying, and he's pissed off all the gods simultaneously. And every time he dies, he will just be reincarnated exactly how he was before he died. And he is searching for the Tomb of Horrors specifically because he's been told that
that'd actually
be pretty sweet.
Nick had something kind of
not a high level character,
kind of similar to that.
Guy.
Just the guy's level 1. He's a peasant. Doesn't even have
was it a cleric, Nick, that you were playing? A death dumbing cleric that just wanted to like see everything die? Like, you just wanted to see death.
People.
You were watching characters
I watched
die.
people just fall into
he watched me fall into a pit, and I'm like, hey, you want to help me out, bro?
Them.
And he just stared at me, dead eyes. I'm just like, cool. I like that, and then I just climbed out.
A couple, and going back to the book in general, Tales of the Onion
There's
Portal.
a lot in
So
there.
it is all
bunch of old dungeons from previous
editions.
editions.
All old dungeons from across the edition. So there's Sunless Citadel, there's the Forge of Fury, White Plum Mountains, the Shrine of Tiamachin, Against the Giants. There's Dead and Thay, which Dead and Thay was actually the adventure they came up with when they were playtesting Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, so that's been revamped. So Tales of the Onion Portal has a lot of like dungeons to play. And what's great is, like, for our Alicia campaign, I'm probably not going to run anything else, maybe one more dungeon, we'll see. I just took a dungeon and threw it in my world, and they ran Sunless Citadel homebrewed. It's great for that. It is a fantastic book for tossing in random dungeons into your game if you want to give your party a break. Books like Ghost of Saltmarsh and the new Candlekeep Mysteries books are identical. They're more anthology, though Ghost of Saltmarsh does have like an underlying
actual campaign
to it, but you can pick things up and spread them. So I'm game to rank Tales of the Yawning Portal, and I would rank it at a B tier under the Lost Mines, personally.
That sounds about right to me, I think, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I just have so little exposure to it.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is just a book to pick up because you want to have some pre-built dungeons to throw down at your players, and that's it. You don't really, there's not a plot to it. It literally is just, you come to this tavern, like the plot is literally, there's a tavern, there's a bunch of portals that take you to these old dungeons. Have fun. But you can just grab the dungeon, slap it in your game, call it a day.
Call it a day.
I mean, technically, you can run Tales of the Yawning Portal as an adventure because, like, your hub is the Yawning Portal. Basically, you go, you get an adventure from Durin, or Durin, whatever his name is, who's like the proprietor of the Yawning Portal. You go off and do the dungeon. But it's so loose. If you had a very like dungeon heavy, like dungeon loving party, it might be a lot of fun. But at that point, I'd probably tell you to run like Princes of the Apocalypse, which is a mega dungeon, or if you want the true mega dungeon, Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which is just 23 layers of dungeon.
Tomb of Annihilation is also a pretty big dungeon crawl module.
Oh, which one?
Tomb of Annihilation. That one kind of near the end, so it's
yeah.
dungeon crawl.
So I guess I'll do a quick aside because the rest of the adventures we haven't played. So if you're hoping we'd rank all of them, we're not because I don't want to pass judgment on ones we haven't done.
There's a few things I know about them, but I don't
I'm in a Tomb of Annihilation game right now with another group. I'm enjoying it so far. It's levels 1 to 15, I think. Maybe it's 1 to 12. I don't remember. Oh. Basically, there's a death curse. People are dying. They can't come back to life. People who were brought back to life are re-dying again. And the party gets tasked with finding out why the death curse is going on. They get sent to this land called Chult. And it's a hex crawl. So if you don't know what a hex crawl is, basically you have a big map that's blanked out with hexes.
1 to 11.
And you move from 1 to 11, thank you. You move from hex to hex to hex to hex, and like different things happen, and there's different encounters within those hexes. Really cool for people who want to do a lot of overland travel. Tomb of Annihilation has a time like stamp on it, meaning you have to complete the adventure in a certain amount of time, or your like person you're trying to help will die. So you can't really explore a whole lot. And I don't want to give too much away because no one in this group, I believe, has played it. And I'm not done with it yet either. So I can't even pass judgment beyond, I think we're level 4 right now, 4 or 5, for 4. So I can't say too much. Right now, if I gut feeling it, I would put it in C over Tiamat, which I'm sure is a hot take because most people consider Tomb of Annihilation to be like Curse of Strahd, Tomb of Annihilation. But I don't know. It hasn't done a lot for me. I was really excited to be a player in it, and it's just been overall just kind of a ho-hum experience in a way. So I would definitely lop it in C, but if the group wants to throw it and not play it, I'd be fine with that too.
I mean, I'm down to throw it in either. I don't know enough about it. All I know is it is hex crawl.
Hex crawl.
And if you're not into hex crawls, you're not gonna like it.
It's like an homage to Tomb of Horrors, so it's the Tomb of Annihilation. I think Asarik, the Lich who makes the Tomb of Horror, is in Tomb of Annihilation. Don't know if you fight him or if you do anything with him. I've purposely kept myself in the dark because I wanted to be a player for this one, where I know a little bit more about some of the other adventures. But yeah, he's on the cover, so he's the creepy Lich dude. And that goat head thing, so if you see like the cover on the...
Oh yeah, that's the head that if you go in, it just kills you.
It just kills you in Tomb of Horror. I don't know if it just kills you in Tomb of Annihilation. My character might find out just for morbid curiosity.
Wouldn't be shocked if they toned it down, because 5e is definitely a lot more forgiving.
I've heard the final dungeon's brutal. Not like Tomb of Horror First Edition brutal, but brutal enough where like party death is capable. Which we've technically, in that adventure, have already had 2 party members killed. One was pleasantly saved by our DM this last session, but the same player too has lost 2 party members, unfortunately, or 2 characters. So it is definitely a more deadly adventure. Like he was playing sorcerer, and we got attacked by giant wasps, and the wasp critted and one-shot him in one hit. Like took his health down to 0 and then to his max, and just knocked him right down, dead.
Jeez.
Yeah, we were like, oh shit.
Those killer hornets be crazy.
Yeah, it'd be an adventure I'd be interested in running if I ever get the chance to. But I have more than enough adventure. I've read Waterdeep Dragon Heist. We're kind of moving into again a very heavily homebrewed version of that for our Elysia campaign, and going on from there. I would talk more about it, but I don't want to spoil anything for anyone in this group because that would mean. Only thing I'll say about Waterdeep Dragon Heist is tons of replayability again. You kind of pick your villain, which picks your season, and you do different things and go different places depending on your season, which is really cool.
I want it! Give me the heist!
I also know that it is usually recommended as like the best. You should play this as the first thing you do because it is the best starting module you can play. I've heard that a lot.
I'll be interested to see how you all feel because we have done Lost Mines and this, and Waterdeep Dragon Heist goes from 1 to 5, which again, that's what Lost Mines went to. I'll be honest, not to really spoil anything too hard. There's no actual heist in the module.
Nope. we will be stealing something.
There will be a heist. Like when I think of heist, I think of breaking in and stealing something and having like an Ocean's 11 plunge. There is none of that in the adventure of having to do that.
To be fair, I can guarantee you, me and Arthur are going to steal something.
Trust me, I'm already coming up with a heist because I read the book front and back and went, there's no heist in this book.
I feel lied to. The fuck?
We're gonna take
me
my
when I'm making my campaigns for my players, my first rule is always allow there to be a way they can steal it.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it is, allow there to be a version of events where they can just steal it.
Nice.
And then because you should always be able, like, in my head I go like, if the party was all rogues, they still should be able to beat the game. It's just really hard and like a lot of
really turn it into Mission Impossible.
An all-rogue party would be very interesting to run like a Ocean's 11 style heist game
Ocean's
with
11,
all
Mission
rogues.
Impossible.
High charismas, high social skills, unique skills. That'd be intense.
It's an Ocean's 11 game. Just
Also the wonderful idea of party of bards being a roaming band going around.
Yeah, trying to do all the really,
day.
Heavy social class like bards and rogues and stuff like that. That'd be fun. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting started with like I said, a heavily homebrewed Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Might be next week. Might be the week after, depending on how long the rest of this goes. What's up?
So we might start it.
We might. So yeah, I don't have anything else. We are at our usual go time for the night, which is hilarious because I was anticipating us being done at like 9:15, 9:30, and now it's 10:30. So we've talked on about like 3 adventures for 3 hours. Yeah. Well, technically like 2 hours because we spent the first hour talking about Sears and stores that went out of business.
Yeah, Blockbuster and all those. I think the only thing I can say about any other modules is the only thing I've heard about Out of the Abyss is it's a pretty module, but it's really great to use if you want to do something in the Underdark, because it's got a lot of stuff about the Underdark and you just slap it in your campaign.
Underdark.
The Underdark's cool, but the campaign itself is pretty with its plot, from what I've heard. And Baldur's Gate, I mean, I don't know enough about it, but
I've heard very mixed things about Baldur's Gate. So again, I preface I don't think Wizards has come out with a bad module. Some work better for other groups. Some require a little more D&D or DM elbow grease. What I've heard about Baldur's Gate is so Waterdeep Dragon Heist takes place in Waterdeep. The whole back half of the book is all stuff on Waterdeep, and how the town works and all the rules and who's there and who's in charge and how you can interact with them. Like, that stuff is fantastic. Baldur's Gate has nothing to do with Baldur's Gate except for the first, 3 levels or something. Like, the starting area, you're in Baldur's Gate, and then you go to hell, and you just are in hell until, whatever the ending of that is. And then the back half of the book has all the Baldur's Gate stuff, and from most people that I've, listened to and read about, they're like, Baldur's Gate got tacked on to this adventure at some point by Wizards when they were writing it. They were like, hey, do you remember when we made Waterdeep Dragon Heist? We want to do that again, but you've already developed this hell adventure, so just slap Baldur's Gate on there like that dude with that flex tape, slapping it onto the leaky water tank.
I sawed this boat in half.
Yeah, literally, and that was Baldur's Gate. And then Princes of the Apocalypse, I just picked up, and I haven't read it yet. I just know from a friend who's run it, he says that the layout of the book is absolute shit. So I'm excited to mull my way through that.
Chapter 1, the finale. Chapter 2, here's what the quest is. Chapter 3, here's some random town you won't go to.
I will say, in terms of adventure layout, I do feel like in Chapter 1, they should lay out, here's the start of the quest, and here's what the party is ultimately trying to do. Sometimes they bury those leads, in random pages in the adventure module. It's in Chapter 4, I actually find out, what the main villain wanted, because it talks about his monologue is in Chapter 4. It's no, move that to the front of the book, which they're getting better about doing.
I will say Strahd did a good job with that.
Strahd did a good job.
Chapter 1's really good with it.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't like about Strahd is they didn't break down how you kill Strahd easily.
Yeah. I will say it is interesting
Matt is taking off. He just messaged me,
Okay.
so which we're gonna be
Bye,
ending here
Furman.
anyways.
Yeah, we're ending in a moment anyways. I might say a few things at the end. So there's no notifications, but I might say a few things of my own. Yeah.
It's a great
And
way
there
to get
were-
off screen.
That was beautifully done. What were you gonna say, Brendan, before we wrap up?
I know, I don't think I've really seen or heard many people talk too much about it, but like the thing that stuck out the most when I was reading through Strahd is the fact that the reason why he's pulling adventurers into Barovia is because he's tired of running Barovia. He doesn't want to be the ruler anymore. He wants people, he's pulling adventurers in, trying to find people that are good enough to run it, but nobody meets his standards because they're not as good as he is. Yeah. Which is why I want to run him at like Cell, because it's a very kind of Cell-style mentality.
Right at all. But there is an underlying theme in Strahd where he's trying to like corrupt the party and turn them into like versions of himself to take Barovia over. Which I think if you wanted to like ditch the Irina plotline and focus more on that,
that would be a good really plot to go off
way to go with. Yeah. Especially if it's a morally gray characters. For people who are interested in running Curse of Strahd, there is a book called I Strahd, which is from the 90s, I think. Audible or Kindle, and it's like $5 or $6. I read it before running Curse of Strahd, and it kind of breaks down like why Strahd is where he is. And it's a great like look into his psyche as a character. And I would almost say it's like a required reading for the module. Like if you really want to develop Strahd, if you really want to freshen your Strahd up, give that book a read. It'll really help you. And it's not long. It's like 200 pages.
Good. Not bad.
Great module.
Oh, that's good. Well, I guess with that, I'm tired. It's a long 4th of July weekend. I don't want to go to work tomorrow, but
understandable.
What do you do? Nah, it's fine.
Whoever wants to go anyway. Anytime.
And especially after a long weekend, you gotta like have a vacation from your vacation almost. So we're signing off. Yep. You guys all have a fantastic night, everyone. Next week we should be picking back up. This was kind of a last minute thing because of some cancellation. If we do something like this again, and you liked it, let us know, because we could do things like rank the races, rank the
classes,
the subclasses. I mean, really, we can do anything. I mean, heck, Matt and I have been messaging back and forth here about starting a D&D, like monthly D&D podcast where we just talk about like our wieners in D&D. So, I mean, that's gonna be a possible future coming. Maybe we'll call it Wieners and Dragons or Dungeons and Wieners.
Wungins and Wagons.
Wungins and Wagons. So, with that, nothing official there, but with that.
Well, some fireworks going off outside.
Hot tub
some
stream.
People had some leftovers.
Hot tub stream. Oh, geez. All right. Well, see everybody next week.
See everyone next week for the regularly scheduled quest.
Normal session. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do for a thumbnail for this, but I'll figure that out later.
Good night.
Hi. It's time for announcement-y things. We're hopefully finishing Ace Attorney tomorrow. Maybe Wednesday, I don't know. We'll find that out. And then we will be moving into Ace Attorney 2. No actual notifications, so nothing on that front. And yeah, until then, maybe, hopefully, finally, I'll be able to stream on a weekend, and we'll be able to get some gear in. I haven't been playing it as much as I'd like to.